1 year since Congress passed the first major gun reform law in decades.
Connecticut U.S. Senator Chris Murphy says his National Safer Communities Summit will highlight the federal gun safety legislation, as well as his own state's tight gun laws.
We're really proud to host this summit in Connecticut and have President Biden join us, because we're proof that if you tighten your laws as a state or as a nation, you will get results.
Connecticut Governor Ned Lamont this month signed a bill further strengthening gun control laws adopted in the wake of the 2012 Sandy Hook school shooting. Other speakers at the event include Education Secretary Miguel Cardona and former Arizona Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, who survived a 2011 shooting. For NPR News, I'm Chris Polanski in Hartford.
In a rare daytime airstrike, Russia fired a dozen missiles at Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, today. NPR's Greg Myrie reports the attack came during a visit by 7 African leaders on a self-described peace mission.
Russia unleashed the assault around midday, sending Kyiv residents scrambling for cover. Ukraine said all 12 missiles were shot down, reflecting an air defense system that's proved extremely effective in the capital. However, falling debris did injure several people and damaged homes. The 7 African leaders, including South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, say they're looking for ways to end the war. They met Ukrainian leaders and plan to travel this weekend to Russia, where they're scheduled to see President Vladimir Putin. Ukraine's foreign minister said the missile strike was a, quote, message to Africa. Russia wants more war, not peace. Greg Myrie, NPR News, Kyiv.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Families of people who donated their bodies to Harvard Medical School are reeling from the allegations that the school's morgue manager was trafficking in body parts. 55-year-old Cedric Lodge, accused of letting buyers come into the morgue to pick out remains that he would later ship to them in the mail. Paula Petanovich says both of her parents donated their bodies to Harvard to further medical research. She says she was stunned when Harvard notified her that her dad's body was among those that were impacted.
It's like a dream, you know what I mean? It's like not real, but it is real.
She says it's wrong that her father's body was desecrated, and she's now seeking to have Harvard return her mother's body. Well, it might not be the happiest of Father's Day weekends if you plan to be on the Mass Pike over the next couple of days. MassDOT says a 7-mile stretch of the Pike will be closed on Saturday for bridge repair, although the work will take place at night. I-90 in West Springfield near the I-91 and Route 5 interchange will be closed to all traffic at 11 p.m. Saturday, with drivers detoured along the state and local roads in Holyoke and Westfield. Drivers will be able to get back on the Mass Pike at the Route 202 interchange in Westfield. A MassDOT spokesperson says work crews will be making bridge repairs along the closed section of highway, which is expected to reopen to all westbound drivers by 6 a.m. on Sunday. That work will be rescheduled if the weather or another emergency prevents it from happening. 78 degrees outside our studio.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Paramount Network, presenting 1883, a Yellowstone origin story, a summer-long event. 1883, full series network premiere, starting Sunday at 8 on Paramount Network.
If it's Friday, it's BPR at the BPL. This is GBH News.
Rowdy, I am Marjorie Eakin. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, as we do every Tuesday and every Friday, and we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News. Good morning, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
By the way, the applause is coming from our 2 co-workers, but thanks to all the rest of you, too. Governor Healey will be here live and in person for Ask the Governor from noon to 1. Plus, we have fabulous live music and live ballet in the 1 o'clock hour. You're not going to want to miss. It's courtesy of the Cambridge Symphony Orchestra's Romeo and Juliet. So it's the biggest story of the week. Henry just mentioned it. Trump be damned. The chief of Harvard Medical School's morgue, Cedric Lodge, is accused of stealing and then selling, quote, dissected portions of donated cadavers, including head, brain, skin, bones, and other human remains. And then, of course, there's Katrina McLean. She's the owner of Cat's Creepy Creations in Peabody. who allegedly sold and shipped the stolen body parts to people in other states. It's obviously a disturbing story, and I want to say this as clearly as I can. We do not want to make light of any of the horrible situation families of the deceased are going through. You heard from some of them in Henry's news. At the same time, it's just too outrageous a story to be ignored. So our questions to you are several. Does this whole episode change how you feel about donating your body to medical science? Do you care what happens to your body after, how should I put this, it's all over? And what about the people who actually buy these things from places like Cat's Creepy Creations?
What's up
the
with
number
that?
is 877-301-8097. I'm going to say it a second time. 100% respect and empathy for people who are wildly upset about what happened to people they love. But we want to know how you feel about this. Does it change your whole planning? If you've signed one of those little checkoffs saying, donate my body, organs, and parts to medical science, do you want to revisit this? 877-301-8097. How do you react to all this?
Well, I think you're the person to weigh in because
Why?
because you told me your mother donated her body to medical science. How would you feel if you saw her face showing up on some little niche store
nice,
in the
but
middle of
that's-
Harvard Square? Well, that's what these people are dealing with, right? They're dealing with people's skulls, people's body parts, people's skin. You know, I don't get it. But you know, it's so weird. You mentioned this woman up there, the woman that runs Cat's Creepy Creations up there in Peabody.
She's charged too, by the way.
She's charged too. Yeah, a bunch of them are charged because she was selling this stuff without permission. It was a fraudulent kind of deal, right? That's the
Well,
crime
no one
alleged.
supports the deceit or the illegality. We're talking about the underlying behavior.
So, you know, you wonder how people get into this kind of thing. I mean, this woman, you know, she started out in the HVAC world, Jim. She started out in plumbing and heating. And we saw her in a picture of a witch's hat up there in Salem. So this is not a good day for PR for witches up there in Salem. But
Well, wait. I mean, that's not worth talking. A lot of people go from plumbing to body parts. I mean, that's not that unusual.
Well, it wasn't straight from plumbing to body parts.
Oh.
No, it was from plumbing, a lifelong love of horror movies. Then it was getting into tattoos in a really over-the-top kind of way. Then she started painting these scary dolls that she would sell to places up in Salem, like creepy, evil dolls that looked like clowns. And then she kind of, in an unexplained way, kind of segued into bones and skulls. And apparently one of her pièce de résistance pieces is a real human skull with a couple of teeth, and the top missing because it's replaced by dried pink flowers.
Huh.
What do we make of that?
Can I say one thing
People
also?
say she's a wonderful person, by the way.
I'm sure she's
People that know her say she's a wonderful, charming,
when it goes
funny
to people
person.
from the HVAC world, she is one of the most respected of anybody I know, at least anybody I've heard of. I don't know. But let me say a couple of, by the way, just one factual clarification. Please correct me if I'm wrong. In terms of the stuff that's at the remains that are at the morgue at Harvard, there's some people who are medical experimentation. You know, you donate your body to science, like my mother did.
That's right.
But the body is waiting to be transferred to medical school, or to students or whatever. The other thing is post-experimentation, when you're just waiting for whatever, burial, cremation.
That's correct.
I mean, in the latter circumstance, I don't want to talk about my mother, if you don't mind.
It's okay.
Even though she had a great sense of humor.
Yeah.
So she...
And you got her back.
Well, she was cremated. I have the box. Yes.
Okay.
Can we move on from this?
Didn't you have
I
her
have to
in
say,
the trunk of your car for years?
She is in the trunk of my car. What do you care? What do you care where she is?
Well, it's a little odd, Jim.
It's not that odd.
To have mom in the trunk.
Where would you put her?
I think...
Okay, fine. So what I was going to say, were it to be me, I'd be upset if I had donated my body, which I think I have to check, to medical science, and the experimentation hadn't been done.
Yeah, right.
I don't think, I cannot tell, I don't think I'd be that upset if the experimentation
Jim,
had been done.
You wouldn't be upset.
And it's just waiting for cremation
or burial. You wouldn't be upset, Jim, because you'd be dead.
No,
that's
exactly my point.
Here's the issue. Your children might be upset.
I don't
if your
think
daughters,
they'd be upset at all.
Maybe not. Maybe not. I mean, you've always talked about, it going on into eternity, not...
I've never talked about
people
going
not
on
forgetting you. Well, you could be in some little Harvard Square niche shop.
On a pole.
on a pole. That's
okay,
right.
We're taking this where we shouldn't really
It could be like Ted Williams. Ted Williams is in that what do you call the thing where you freeze your crypto, whatever it is?
It's not crypto.
Chirogenic, something like that.
Yeah, it's frozen. His head is
frozen.
on a tuna can.
Ted Williams,
and
the
by the way,
great
it's not made up. Read
Red
Ben
Sox
Bradley
slugger.
Jr.'s biography.
He's on
of
a
Ted
tuna
Williams.
can in some place waiting for it to be unfrozen.
Okay, 877-301-8970. As always, Marjorie has taken this where we chose not to go, and she has gone anyway. We want to know, what's your reaction to this Harvard story? How do you react to people who purchase this stuff? And I answer as honestly as you could. Don't answer nobody wants their relative to be abused like this if that was their wish. Talk about yourself. You're dead at some point, which most of us are going to be, and they do this. Are you really that upset about the prospect?
You could also take it another direction. What's up with people who want the books in their library to be covered by human skin?
Do you know there's a book at the Athenaeum? Remember we had the guy, what's his name, from Atlas Obscura, and one of the Atlas Obscura things is at the fabulous Athenaeum down the street on Beacon Street, on Beacon Hill, where there is a book that I believe you can see if you put in a request. That is bound, I guess, is the
you tan the human skin.
Yeah.
It creates life. That's one of the things that the lady from Cat's Creepy Creation was involved in, and she would pay people if instead of with money, she would pay them in some instances with human skin. A chest piece apparently was shipped off to Pennsylvania to be tanned into leather. So 877-301-8970 is the number. Perhaps you're into this. If you are, you could tell us all about it. It's a very small group of buyers, according to the Boston Globe, a niche market,
actually.
And some people are involved in some kind of fetish stuff, and if you want to tell us about that, I went to the fetish fair once. It was at the Holiday Inn down in South Shore.
And met her dentist at the
My dentist was at the fetish fair,
Okay, let's go to Don, who I don't think is in Montpelier, France or Vermont. What's your deal, Don? Where are you calling from?
Hello. Hello, can you hear me?
I think we can. Hi.
Yes. Yes, I am in Montpellier, France. I'm calling you on my Skype line because your 877 number doesn't work on
I'm really sorry.
But
well, nice to have you.
We have to believe me that I'm really not calling from a basement in Chelsea.
Okay. Fine. What's your deal?
But yeah, I just wanted to observe that this whole horrible situation in Salem really is the end point, the logical end point for the total overwhelming overtaking of Salem by the whole witch industrial complex over the past 20 years. Many residents there are very unhappy by the fact that the whole entire downtown has been completely overtaken by witchcraft and occult stores.
Exactly.
And, I'm a great fan of the show, but I really have to take you both to task for having Mayor Kim Driscoll on and really sort of cheerleading for haunted happenings and really not reflecting on the fact that the whole premise for Salem's role as the Halloween capital of the world is the fact it was the site of the judicial murder of 19 people for witchcraft in 1692.
Can I make a suggestion, Don? I would go back to sightseeing in France if I were you. But thank you. We really appreciate your point of view. We do. And thank you for your call. Call us again soon from your next destination. 877-301-8970. So
Kim Driscoll, of course, is the lieutenant governor now.
She was
and
the
I've
mayor
been
of
to
Salem.
many times. It's not all about witches downtown.
No,
They do a very nice job, by the way, up in Salem of detailing the horrors of the
They do. That's why I didn't
trials.
quite get what was going on
Yeah,
there.
I don't get what's going on either. But everybody, well, maybe he's interested in some of this paraphernalia. I don't know.
No, he's not interested in the paraphernalia. He was actually on the other end of the spectrum, I believe.
Judy from DeWitt, New York. Thank you for calling.
Hey, Judy, what's going on?
I just wanted to say that my father, a Harvard graduate, had wanted his body to be left to Harvard Medical School. My sister, his daughter, didn't let that happen because she knew how bodies could be treated.
Really?
She's not alive now, but I wish I could tell her how correct she was.
Why did she even suspect that this was Harvard specific or just in general?
Yes. Well, no, her bad experiences had not been at Harvard. She had been married to medical students who had, I think, taken her to a medical school at Columbia or something.
Oh, boy.
But she thwarted our father's plans because she didn't want his body disrespected.
Well,
I'll tell you something, Judy. I mean, this is, needless to say, causing a lot of bad publicity for Harvard.
You think so?
I think, and causing, unfortunately, very bad feelings for people that, like Judy, who were suspicious about how their bodies would be handled post-mortem. And my goodness, they're going to have to straighten out. I mean, the oversight who was making the analogy? Was it Andrea Cabral that was making the analogy between this and the drug stealing that went on in these places where the illegal drugs would be tested?
She was saying people left alone.
Left alone, yeah, to their own devices.
Judy, thank you for
because
your call.
this guy that was arrested at Harvard, he's been there for years, and the question was there oversight? How could he get away with this for years, diverting organs and body parts that have been donated and selling them? And I think that was the point Andrea Cabral, who was the former sheriff of Suffolk County, was making. You need to have oversight in these situations to make sure this kind of shenanigans isn't going on. But I guess I wonder, again, I'm just fascinated by people who are into this. I mean,
well, obviously there's something wrong with them. I mean, I don't understand.
Well, maybe not.
What are you talking
I don't know.
about?
Well, we had the Atlas Obscura thing with the book covers.
You don't think that's odd?
I don't. Well, it's odd. It's
By the
unusual.
way, Zoe, our colleague, I think thinks I was a little unfair to that first caller who called in from France, saying he did have a point. She says, I think the average numbers are more than a quarter of Salem's economy comes from the month of October. They've completely commercialized a mass murder. They do have a lot of historical events coinciding in that month that also educate people the actual event, but he makes a fair point. So, Don, if you're listening from somewhere in France, I may have given you short shrift. My apologies. 877-301-8970.
But I'm going to defend the city of Salem. I mean, the times I've been there, and I've been there many times.
So have I,
it is a huge Halloween event. You know, people get all dressed up when they go there for Halloween. Yeah. But if you go to the different, they make it clear. I don't think that they're saying that what the witch trials was any great thing.
Well, that's a wonderful point.
They're talking about how people can get caught up in a fervor and a kind of a mob mentality, and I think it's very good to remind people of how easy that can happen. I think we just saw mob mentality and mob mentality take over January 6th. I'm not saying anybody was murdered or burned at the stake, obviously, but that's the point, I think, of what they tried to do up in Salem.
There's also another possible solution to this problem, and we had a meeting this morning, as we do every day before the show. Aiden and Jamie and Marjorie and I, our colleagues Aiden and Jamie, and a suggestion was made that one way to deal with this, for example, I'm pretty sure I checked off one of those donation of body parts things. I think as my mother did, sort of in honor of her kind of thing. But the suggestion was made that at least so that there's full transparency, you have a couple of options. The donation form could say, check this box if you want your remains donated to medical science, and check this box if you want your remains sold to Cat's Creepy Creations.
Exactly.
Don't you think that's another?
You could make the choice. Well, Paul from Worcester is kind of in that school of thought.
He
just texted and said, I've instructed my kids that when I die, treat me like an old Chevy with a blown motor. Strip me for parts, throw the rest in a dumpster. If they can sell any of those parts, I hope they make sure to haggle over the price. So there you go.
I mean, that's sort of not, I couldn't articulate it that way. It's sort of how I feel, but obviously other people feel differently, particularly not about themselves, but someone they loved. Bethany, you're in Attleboro. Welcome to the show. Hi.
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 I'm sorry, I'm laughing about the Cat's Creek.
Totally okay.
My mother was a huge fan. I lost both my parents in the past 10 years.
Sorry.
To rare forms of cancer, and they both donated their bodies. And I just wanted to say, and I'm donating mine. I've already filled out all the forms.
Great.
And I'm not scared. There's always a chance that you're going to have this happen. I think that you have to be realistic. I'd like to think it wouldn't happen in 99.999% of the cases.
I think it doesn't.
But
no, really, I'm assuming you're right. Yeah, go ahead.
But it's more important. And Jim, I hope, were you joking about keeping your mom in the trunk, or?
Well,
because I do keep my parents' ashes with me.
Well, no, I'm not joking. She is in the trunk.
I saw this huge box.
In the trunk.
I saw them in the box.
It's actually a tiny.
I asked Jim, what is that?
It's not a huge box. It's a tiny little box.
Okay.
But go ahead, Bethany.
My parents are in the glove compartment.
There you go.
I keep a little bit of their ashes with me.
Well, I'm really glad you called, so Marjorie can now mock you rather than just Bethany. That was an excellent call. By the way, I'm totally with her. Despite this horror show at Harvard, which is, by the way, no one, regardless of what our position is on the questions you and I are posing, no one supports the deceit. If you make a promise to a family or an individual, you have to honor it.
It's terrible.
We're talking in general, but I'm totally with her. I'm not about to change any commitment I've made to donate anything. I don't think anybody else should. This is hopefully an outline kind of thing.
Well, the texters are expressing varied opinions on this.
What are they saying?
Well, Bob from Plymouth says he'd be kind of honored if his junk was in a gift shop.
Okay. You know, oh my God.
Sorry,
okay.
I couldn't resist.
Well, actually you could resist, Marjorie, but you chose not to. We have to take a break, Marjorie.
Okay.
Okay.
We're talking about this distressing story.
Marjorie's going to get fired for this segment. Let me tell you right now.
We're talking about this disturbing story about Harvard Medical School's morgue director selling off body parts to vendors and curio collectors, and wondering if you can see the appeal in any of this stuff, or do you wonder who these people are that want it in their houses? We got to take a quick break. More of your calls and texts when we return. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
I'm Marco Werman. Literally yelling into the wind, you might not be able to hear yourself, but a new study out of Finland says it depends on the flow of air.
The yeller thinks that he is quieter, but the person who is in front might hear him very well.
The science of shouting into the wind, next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com. And South County, Rhode Island, featuring 100 miles of coastline and 20 public beaches. South County visitors can find many ways to enjoy the water in the Ocean State. Learn more at southcountyri.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She's Marjorie, and we're live at the library as we are every Friday, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News, facebook.com/GBH News. The governor will join us right after the noon news, 12 o'clock till after a little bit after 1 for Ask the Governor. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about this awful, nearly unbelievable story about body parts, skin, etc., sold off from Harvard Medical School's morgue. There have been charges filed against a whole bunch of people. What happened to these families, obviously, is horrible, disturbing, and we wish them nothing but justice and peace. But not everybody feels the same way. How are you reacting to the story of the century? Would you be concerned if it was your body in question? And what Marjorie wants to know is, how do you feel, or what do you make of the people who decide to trade? I don't mean the sellers as much. Well, I mean, like people like the woman who runs Cat's Creepy Creations, the people that buy the stuff from her, that sort of thing. 877-301-8970.
Now, I said that this was causing distress for the reputation of the Harvard morgue up there, but not everybody sees it this way. Bill from Bridgewater just texted, and he said, I think that's the only way I would get into Harvard.
It's really, these are pathetic. Gary, you're in Wisconsin. Welcome to the show, Gary. Good to talk to you as always. What's up?
Yeah, it's funny you just mentioned that. My mother used to joke that was the only way she was going to go to Harvard, and she did. In 2017, she passed, and she donated her remains, and we were going to go along with what she wanted. Of course. And they keep the body for about 2 years or so, and then they send you the ashes. We got the ashes about a year and a half ago. Now I don't know if those are her ashes or not, and it's just so disgusting. How did this guy get away with this for 4 years? Was there no oversight, or
Yeah, that's it.
I called
Gary.
I called Harvard.
Go ahead.
I spoke to a very nice lady. They have a consolation hotline going on, and of course, it's an ongoing investigation. But I just can't believe that this is happening.
Obviously, no oversight, no supervision, Gary.
I don't think, though, Gary. I don't think anybody's alleging they mixed up the ashes, though. I don't think anybody's saying that, are they?
I don't think so.
They were just saying that they were taking parts. So I hope they are your mother's ashes.
No. But what I'm getting at is, when I talked to this lady, she seemed to imply that yes, my mother was most likely one of these people. And
really?
Yeah, and I was going by math and the numbers that they got, and I told her the times, and it's just I don't know. I just don't know how to deal with it. I have so many mixed feelings, and I just don't get it. I just don't get how anybody could think to this level of depravity. It's disgusting.
Well, if these charges are proven, those who thought it was acceptable and made a profit are going to pay a price. Gary, we're sorry about your circumstance, and we wish you the best. Thanks for your call. 877-301-8970.
We're getting several emails from people who say they are oddities, lovers, and collectors, but they're not giving any details.
What do you mean oddity? Oddity lovers?
They can't get through on the phone. Give me some details on text. If you can't get through on the phone, I'd be happy to read them.
How do you not think this is perverse? That even if you're okay with it with your own body, which you haven't answered, by the way, the purchase, you don't find demented that somebody wants to own a body part?
I think it's really kind of odd. And there's a story in the Globe. It talks about this is a very, very small group of people.
It is.
That we should be happy about that. A couple of them are from Pennsylvania, though, Jim. They live near you, where you grew up. And they also talk about that some people have a fetish for this kind of thing. But this woman that gave it...
Well, that's exactly right. It's like a sick fetish.
This woman up there that someone corrected me when I said it's strange that her friends call her a wonderful person, because this texter said, well, lots of sociopaths people think are wonderful people too.
That's a very good point.
But she talked in this podcast, she basically confessed to the crime about segueing, from making these kind of scary dolls into dealing in body parts. She said, I just sort of branched off and started making skull plaques.
Sure.
Skull plaques, and one of her skull plaques is a skull with missing part of the head.
Oh,
because she's got these dry pink flowers in there. And then she does, this is one of them.
Wait, she has flowers in the skull?
Okay, this is it. She posted an image of one of her skull plaques. The top of the skull had been removed, replaced with a collection of dried pink flowers, brass gears in a variety of sizes screwed into jawbones, eyes, and other parts of the skull, which was then mounted on a plaque and hung on a door. And the description said, steampunk human skull with dried flowers.
Okay, fine. Now, Joanne...
And I guess people buy them.
Well, I guess they do. By the way, Zoe just typed us a note. Again, it's legal to buy and sell human bones that have been ethically sourced. I don't know what ethically sourced means. It's illegal to steal them from morgues. Well, that we probably knew, but the former I was not aware of. Joe, but bones are, the difference with bones, I'm not defending the deceit. Bones, you really can't identify whose bones they are, right? A face or something, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You may not care what happens, but your relatives. We just had this gentleman call.
I don't want flowers planted in my head on a plaque. I mean, if Kat is listening...
That might be a step too far.
Joanne and Dorch... Ooh, we're going to get to you, Joanne, in a minute. Sorry, Ann in Sudbury. Hi, Ann. What's up?
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to say, from a different perspective, if some of the body parts that perhaps were cancerous had been stolen for fun, or for some of these weirdos who just want pieces of a human being, what would have happened had that body part actually been subjected to some research, and perhaps, just perhaps, a cure may have been found?
That's a great point.
I'm thinking specifically, my own dad died of glioblastoma. And that was back in 1987. Glioblastoma has since taken Teddy Kennedy and John McCain and God knows how many other people. I hope that my father's brain was studied, because that was the intention when our family donated it. But now you got me wondering.
Well, you state the perspective of a lot of people who have been quoted in news stories beautifully, and obviously that's why your father chose to do it, and that's the hope of your father's kids, that it would lead to something good. That's the motivation to begin with. Ann, thanks for a great call. We appreciate
Jim,
it.
you shouldn't feel so bad about keeping your mother's ashes in the trunk.
I don't feel bad about it in the
We're
slightest.
getting lots of texts from people. The woman that just called
Bethany
said her parents were in the glove compartment. Marcia from Plymouth just said that we had ashes in the sock drawer for quite a number of years.
A lot of people do.
Someone else said that when their fiancé moved in, they were surprised to find a bunch of loose ashes on the floor in her closet. They thought it was a book, but in fact it was just ashes strewn about the closet floor. So I guess not everybody...
Wait, but they don't know that it was a human being.
Well, the girlfriend or boyfriend of the fiance knew it was one of her relatives' ashes.
Do you have Harry the Pea's ashes?
I do have Harry the Pea's ashes.
We had a cat
That's
a decade ago. I got the cat's ashes.
Well, that's right.
Where are Harry the Pea's ashes?
In a place of honor, of course.
Where?
That's my dog.
Meaning you don't know you lost them.
No, it's in a little. We have
Where
a little.
are they? You
we
have
have
no
a little
idea
wooden
where they
box.
are. I know you.
They're
Where
in
are
my
they?
dining room. My daughter could be listening right now. They're in my dining room, and they're on a little side thing with Harry the Peanut's birth date and death date.
So
right
what are you
on the
making
top.
fun of? You have your dog's ashes in your dining room?
Absolutely.
And you're mocking me for my mother being in my trunk?
Well, I think being in a display in the dining room is more respectful than being in the trunk of your car, which often smells.
I have a lot of things I care about in my
bad.
trunk, actually.
Well, there's mushrooms growing in the back of your car, Jim. I hate to tell you. Joanne from Dorchester, thank you for calling.
Let me tell you who also, Joanne, before you speak, you know who has an unnatural interest in this? Zoe. I mean, Zoe's sending us a lot of stuff there. I hope she's okay. Joanne in Dorchester, you're next. What's your deal?
Hi, you guys.
Hi.
So at first I was going to call and say that I thought that, I'm a little disconcerted because there's an echo coming back from the library, but oh well.
We're okay on this end. Go ahead.
I was going to call and say that, I hope that people continue to donate to medical schools,
So do
because
I.
if we don't have bodies for medical students to dissect, then we don't have doctors, and that's bad for all of us. But then when you started joking, early on in the segment, you started joking about, your mother's ashes and the other things that people, it quickly segued into jokes. I started thinking about the people who might be listening and who are in the families that this happened to. And I realized that there's no way to bring up something like this without it segueing into humor. I mean, that's our sort of nature as human beings. We want to, we sort of deal with these kinds of topics in part by humor. But I also am sort of feeling very ambivalent about this whole segment and the direction it's going, because I'm trying to put myself in the place of, one of those people who might feel differently than you or I maybe about.
Well, Joanne, we tried to be sensitive to that, if I may. I think we've said 4 or 5 times, and you may think it's not enough, and we respect your position, that we have total respect and understanding of a lot of the families. Henry Santoro in the news played sound from a daughter of
we just
a man.
talked to a gentleman.
And so there are right, exactly. There are a lot of people who are upset, but you can respect other people's perspective and grief and have a different position. And as you say, dark humor is what sort of one resorts to when you're dealing with painful situations. So totally respect your point of view, and you may be right, and if we offended people, our apologies. It's just we did what we did. But Joanne, thank you for your thoughtful call. We appreciate it.
I just want to say before we go, we have a few texts from people who are, as this person calls himself, a horror fan who's devoted his life to macabre history and is into this kind of thing.
Into buying it?
No, he says, but this kind of thing violates every ethical boundary that the vast majority of historians and tourism professionals and people who are into the macabre believe in. So there you go. There's an ethical way to do this, and there's an unethical way to do this. And if you're into this kind of stuff, I don't understand it, but, each to his own.
And if we offended anybody, as they say, and I'm assuming we did based on that fine call a minute ago, our apologies. That was not our intent.
Okay, coming up, we're going to talk to the Boston Globe's Shirley Leung, the business columnist there. We're going to ask her the burning question we've been trying to get out of her for like weeks now, and that is, can you drive your car in a bus lane if there's no bus in the lane? And a bunch of other business news. You're listening to Boston Public.
Crossley. While the federal Juneteenth holiday is largely a day of celebration, it was born out of America's tragic history of slavery. Some communities have moved to silence conversations about the nation's past. So how can children's book authors convey the reality as well as the pride and joy of freedom? That's Under the Radar with me, Callie Crossley, Sunday night at 6 here on 89.7 GBH and the GBH app.
Support for our programs comes from you and Mass General Brigham Health Plan, a health plan connected to a world-leading healthcare system, committed to providing innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Learn more at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org.
And Comcast. Through Project UP, Comcast is committing $1 billion to help provide people with the skills, resources, and opportunities they need to succeed in a digital world. Learn more at comcast.com/projectup.
Welcome Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy. We're live at the library as we are every Friday, streaming on youtube.com/GBH News, facebook.com/GBH News. Symphonic music and ballet on the radio in the 1 o'clock hour. Noon in exactly 30 minutes, the governor will join us more. Healey will be here for Ask the Governor from 12:06 to just after 1. But right now we're joined in person by Shirley Leung, business columnist for the Boston Globe and a weekly BPR contributor. Hey there, Shirley.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
So,
Hello,
Shirley,
Young.
can we cut to the chase?
Yes.
I texted you some photographs this week. What did I text you photographs of?
They appear to be cars, bus-only lanes.
Driving in bus-only lanes. And last week when you were here, we discussed whether or not one can drive in a bus-only lane. You said, as a crack journalist, as you are, you would get to the bottom of this. You've had 7 days to do your work, and the answer is?
Well.
Sounds like she hasn't done her work.
I didn't do my homework, but lucky for me,
What happened?
I ran into MassDoc spokeswoman Jackie Goddard.
Who is a news person in her former life, by the way. Hey, Jackie, it's nice to see you.
She has the answers.
What's the answers?
She says there's no state law against driving
Good.
in the bus-only
That's
lanes.
great.
Wait a second.
That's great.
So what is the point of a bus only?
When a bus is coming, you move out of the lane.
And what if you
That's
don't
what
move
do.
out of the way?
Then you.
Excuse me, you the spokesperson for the Department of
I am
Transportation?
not, but I think that's a good idea
Well, wait
because
a
otherwise,
second.
what?
What's the answer to the question? So if there are no rules,
So it's being a good citizen. That's the rule.
so it's like an honor system?
It's an honor system. But that's why I've been hearing about, I think there's talk of passing legislation to create fines, I think,
To
right?
make bus only mean bus only?
Yes,
That's a terrible
Are you
idea.
nodding in
Right,
agreement?
right.
That's
so-
a terrible idea.
Jackie
If
looks
you can
pretty
see
nervous to me,
in front
by
of
the
you
way.
and behind you, if there are any buses there, and to not.
Maybe you need to
have
ask the
an
governor
empty
where she is
lane
on this.
of
Maybe
traffic.
wait a second. Jackie, just nod your head. I'm sorry to put you on the spot here, but you are here and you are the spokesperson for the Department of Transportation. So if I choose, which I do not, to drive in a bus-only lane, and
When
there's
there
a
are
bus,
no buses
excuse me,
in sight,
and there are buses coming,
you move.
And excuse me, and I block them, I've committed no offense. Is that correct? Oh my God!
Okay. So that means
that is insane.
Well, this is why I wanted to do a story. You have
I'm not
almost have to-
criticizing her,
Right,
by
right.
the
You have
way.
to almost create your own rules of the road because this came
So
up.
to speak.
So this came up was when I'm in. If I'm going to take a right turn, can I take a right turn? Can
I was
get
at
into the
downtown
bus
crossing
lane?
the other
Yes.
day on on Washington Street,
Yes.
right in front of the legal
Right,
seafood there,
right.
and everybody. That's one of the pictures I
Yes.
sent you. Everybody's in the bus only lane. I, like an a-hole, am in the regular part of the street, and I can't even make a turn.
Right.
And it turns out they were doing the right.
I when I'm in Rosendale, I think is it Washington. I do go in. I end up going into the bus only lane in order to turn right. So I think it's okay. But I wanted to get to the bottom.
I think
of that.
we need not only bus lanes but bike lanes.
No, you can't drive in a bike lane.
You can't drive in a
Marjorie.
bike lane.
No,
Well,
you
in
can't. I'm
January,
sorry.
in a snowstorm,
No,
when there's no one in the line,
no.
no one on a bicycle,
Bikes are
you're
too
going to cram
vulnerable.
everybody into
Okay,
one
fine.
lane when they could be in two lanes.
maybe
Doesn't make sense.
Maybe in the bus when we're in the bus bike only lanes, but sometimes.
Okay,
it's
can I
very
get back to
hard,
you
and
for a second?
Yes.
Marjorie and I get action on nothing. You get action on everything. You write a column and the legislature quakes in its boots. You got a campaign for there to be, I'm serious,
To
for
be
there to be
fined.
a law change that you can't, by the way, it cannot be only when the bus comes, because people are going to say, sort of like Larry David and the disabled person's
That's
stall in the
ridiculous.
bathroom.
That's ridiculous. You can drive down Washington Street for 15 minutes and never see a bus coming
And what if
anywhere.
you're stuck in the bus lane and when you try to get out of it, there's a line of cars, so you can't get out of the bus
well,
lane?
if you were a better driver, Jim, you could figure out how to maneuver your way back into the line. I mean, it's gonna breed hostility and frustration. If you're stuck in traffic and there's an empty line next to you and it's empty,
Okay.
you can't say, I don't think, no one's going to
Well,
pay attention
I guess
to it
you
anyway.
need to ask the governor next.
Maybe we will. Well, it so
Where is
happens
she
she's
on-
coming in a
yeah,
few minutes.
Where is she?
And let me
on
tell you, when you
fine-
drive down
fines?
Beacon Street in the bus lane, and the bike lane rather, that's what everybody does. When they're bikes,
Well, you
they
shouldn't
move.
ever drive
well,
in a bike lane.
that's what they
ever.
do.
Well,
okay.
wait, mean you do.
I have once or
Well,
twice.
that's a real problem. It's a real problem.
A problem when there's no
bikes. A
bikes.
bus is a bus. A bike is a bike.
Jim, when there's no bikes in front of you or behind you, you can see the bikes.
But
Shirley, can I just say one thing?
Yes.
You did a miserable job of following up on this.
I did.
If Jackie Goddard wasn't here, you'd be screwed.
I would be screwed.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
True.
All right,
it's true.
Let's move on. Let's move on. Okay, so great story by John Chester, one of your colleagues, about what's going on downtown 3 years after the COVID onset, and everybody moved out, not everybody, but lots of companies moved out of downtown, still really suffering down there.
Well, yes, and so John Chesto is a fellow a reporter in the business section of the Globe, and he has this afternoon habit of a Diet Coke. He needs to grab a Diet Coke. And we used to have a convenience store at the bottom of our building.
I remember
but that closed during the pandemic, and there are no vending machines in the building.
Why not?
I don't know why there aren't any vending machines. So
I think they could spring for some vending machines at the Boston Globe. That's what I think.
And then there used to be a 7-Eleven around the corner on State Street, but that closed too. And then I said to John, "Why don't you go to Dunkin'?" He's like, "Oh no, Dunkin' Donuts only has Diet Pepsi." So, and then there was a CVS a few blocks away at Post Office Square, but that closed as well. And so there are very few places, within a few blocks. We're at 53 State Street, where you can actually get a Diet Coke. Of course, I was like, why don't you just buy a lot of Diet Coke and stuff it in the fridge?
Yeah.
Well, the important part of this story is not that he can't get a Diet Coke, even though that was the entry point. The important, Mayor Wu is, it seems to me, doing everything she can to try to encourage people to come back downtown.
Yeah.
There's also, I think John Chester writes about this, I wouldn't say plans, discussion of converting some of these office buildings to residences, which according to him is no mean feat. It's a pretty difficult task, right?
It's hard, and there are very few buildings that you really have to look at a lot older buildings. None of these skyscrapers. It's very hard to have these skyscrapers that were built in the 80s or 90s converted. It's really much older stock that needs to be converted. But there are still a lot of empty storefronts in Downtown Crossing. Even part of it is the hybrid workplace, right? A lot of people aren't coming back 5 days a week. They're coming back 2 days a week or 3 days a week.
Yeah, the story says 96% of the people surveyed in this McKinsey company survey were doing hybrid work, not exclusively, but some there, some not there.
Right, and so it's enough where if you're a 7-Eleven, right, you used to have all these people downtown, you can't make the numbers work, and so you got to close.
Yeah.
Have you written about in the past? I bumped into it. We went to, I don't know what we went to the other night. We went to something. What do we go at the to see Rick Steves, the Boston Pops.
Right.
In the hall afterwards, or during the intermission, I bumped into this wonderful woman you probably know, Bessie King, and her mother, who owned Via Mexico Cafe.
Right, yes, they're still open down there.
They're still open,
right.
But when they're a small business,
yes.
They've been working for years.
Yes.
And I'll state the obvious: when the buildings are a third empty or whatever they are, obviously their business suffers.
Yeah.
So
there's lunchtown crowd is not there anymore.
So is there
days.
and by the way, to your credit, the first person to write about the nightmare that was coming was you when you walked down Newbury Street at the beginning of COVID and wrote in your column how the Pru and other big buildings fed literally and figuratively. So is there a plan that's credible, or is it just fingers crossed everywhere?
It's going to take time. I mean, basically the plan is we have to reimagine downtown. It's no longer a place for office workers. You've got to create a 24/7 neighborhood.
But what does that mean? If they can't be converted to residences realistically, they're not going to be full office buildings.
Well, that's another thing to ask the governor. Will she commit state funds to convert more? To convert more office buildings into residential opportunities, residential homes, housing. I mean, that's what needs to be done. I mean, and there are a lot of examples of this around the world. Up in Canada, there are subsidies. Other cities are
to convert what were offices into residential space.
I mean, that's what's so that's what needs to be. The developers, the building owners, they need encouragement. They need abatements. They need. That's actually something that I'm working on as well, looking into this whole idea of what would it take to create, to bring more housing into downtown, more other uses to downtown, so it it becomes lively again.
Is any major city in the United States dealt successfully with this problem yet, or no?
They're all the same. I mean, we're all coming out of the pandemic and trying to figure it out. And I think a lot of cities are learning from each other. Think about New York City. They've got a lot of office space. San Francisco has a lot of office space. Chicago, Washington, D.C. Everybody is looking at everyone's talking to each other about how do we figure this out, because clearly the office workers aren't coming back 5 days a week. Maybe they'll come back 3 days a week.
Yeah, this survey said 21% some in-person presence, 23% leave it up to employees to decide how often to come in, 13% have different rules for different roles, only 4% are fully there in person.
And isn't it in the same story, 10% of the employees are out of state? I think that's the number in the story.
Yeah, because it's so expensive to live here. I mean, that's another big problem for Massachusetts is that it is so expensive to live here. If you can work remotely, why live here?
But if you could convert tons of these office buildings with state subsidies to residences, you increase the housing supply and hopefully bring the price down.
Can we move on to the moonshot thing?
You can move on to whatever you want.
I tell you one thing. If Massachusetts were the first state in the union to offer universal free child care, you know what that would do? That would turn everything around. Now the question is who's going to pay for it.
Well, why don't you explain what you're talking about?
Well, this is a story that one of your colleagues wrote about moonshot ideas for.
There was a conference called the Innovation on Conference.
And the one that really got my juices flowing was the free child care, because it is so expensive to live here. Obviously, people will live in New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and they'll live in who knows where if they can work remotely. But free child care?
I know.
Imagine.
Can you explain who these people are who came up with these ideas?
Well, it's just 100 tech entrepreneurs, VCs, venture capitalists, angel investors. They came together, for what they call an Innovation on Conference, and they said, what are 10 ideas, moonshot ideas, that would make Massachusetts a great place to live and work? And they talked about housing, they talked about transportation. Free child care also caught my eye. It made me think, well, does someone, I think other parts of the world might have free.
Lots of places do.
Have
Scandinavian
is it free
countries.
Or is it subsidized?
A lot of Western Europe.
I think places like Norway, Sweden, the happiest places on earth
have free or subsidized childcare.
Even sliding scale childcare would be great.
Would be great.
Pay a percentage. I remember when Elizabeth Warren ran for president, said no more than 7% of your salary should go for childcare instead of 40% of your salary. I mean, people pay more for childcare than they do for their rent or their mortgage. And as we all know, the rents and mortgages in Massachusetts are also ridiculous. But even a sliding scale.
You know who you should ask about that?
The governor.
The governor. Thank you. One of the, I don't mean disrespect to the tech, whatever the hell they are, the innovators, the entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Some of the ideas are so painfully obvious that I don't quite get why. I'm like, free childcare, duh, we understand. It's a really expensive proposition.
But no, that's not. Come on, that's not obvious.
It isn't obvious?
Well, no, because no one's
People think that's revolutionary.
Right.
We'd be the first
No, I don't mean
state in
easy.
America.
I mean, obviously, it's one of the great inhibitors, for example, about the prior topic, about people coming back to work because they can't afford. But the thing that I couldn't believe is one of the 10 moonshot ideas is create autonomous vehicle lanes.
Right.
This comes out right on the heels of hearing that Teslas are killing people left and right and causing accidents. I shouldn't say left and right. I don't want to scare people. But the numbers are higher than were reported. This came out a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
Is that really a solution? Autonomous vehicle lanes?
Maybe 50 years from now.
Maybe. Exactly.
But, they had something about housing, about more modular housing. I think
what is modular
Bruce
housing?
Marks at NACA is doing modular housing in Newark.
It's just, they have it in other parts of the country.
You build it elsewhere.
It's kind of like IKEA. It's like IKEA for housing.
You put it on a truck and drive it to the place it's going to be?
That's what Bruce Marks was talking to us about when he was here a couple of weeks ago.
I was confused about that.
Oh, well, now you know.
I've seen that on the road. Matter of fact, in high school, one of my friends got a modular house. It was coming down 195. They had to wind through these little winding roads
it's not
in
very
Westport.
Popular here, but some people do it, and but it's just lowers the cost of housing construction.
And it actually looks. He brought us some graphic stuff, which looked really attractive. He's got a deal with the mayor of Newark. We should actually, Mayor Wu's here Tuesday. Is she here Tuesday? Mayor Wu is with us on Tuesday. We'll bring that up
Write
too.
that down.
So.
Ask the mayor.
I'm writing it down.
I thought Mayor Walsh, he also was a proponent of
this
so-called stick-built. But I think the barrier, and as this story raises, is the union. I think the unions want to build more housing, but is there a way to make this labor-friendly modular housing?
Our staff says house
modular.
comes in multiple pieces built in a factory, and then they're put together in a normal house.
Right.
Yeah.
Although I've seen them as almost whole houses coming down the highway in a truck.
Right.
Flatbed truck.
Yeah, well, check out the NACA website. I don't mean to just be celebrating them, but this is one of the ideas they're pushing big time.
But I hate to get carried away with this, but imagine, we talk about, the governor talks about this all the time, the competitiveness issues because it's so expensive to live here. Childcare, reduced cost childcare. I mean, talk about a game changer because once you get the childcare, then you stay here to go to the elementary school and all that kind of stuff. We have a great education system.
I mean, there is a lot of discussion, within your administration about reducing childcare costs. I just haven't heard free childcare.
I haven't heard free childcare either.
Like we talk about
Because
universal, universal pre-K. I haven't heard of universal child care
Well, because
yet.
it's so expensive, and who's going to pay for it? And we're going to raise taxes to pay for it. Then it becomes a big fight, and it probably will never happen.
Well, there is the millionaire's tax.
Well, except as we are going to discuss with the governor, the Senate, and the House are about to pass a tax cut that could be as much as $1 billion a year down the line. And the question, I think, is, would the average voter prefer to see that $1 billion dedicated to subsidize child care to make the state more competitive, or would they prefer to see tax cuts to make the state more competitive?
So we talked to your colleague David Abel yesterday because he had this unbelievable movie, In the Whale. It's a documentary about Michael Packard, this Provincetown fisherman who wound up in the belly of a
mouth of
a humpback whale and was spit out, thank goodness, by the humpback whale. And it's a great documentary. But he also wrote a great piece about something I had no idea about: cement and cement's relation badly to climate change. Where was the story that said cement creates more
carbon, right?
More carbon than I gotta find it. I lost it.
It's
but
his
anyway,
story.
It's a big deal.
It's his story. Yeah, it creates so much. It's bad. I didn't know the cement and the process of making cement is bad for the environment.
It was creating cement. Last year was responsible for nearly 2.8 billion tons of carbon dioxide, more than triple the amount of carbon pollution from global aviation, according to the Center for International Climate Research in Norway. So we shouldn't be flying in airplanes. We should not be making cement. But what was the story about?
Well, the story is about a collection of companies here and all over the country. They're trying to, I guess, make a more eco-friendly cement. Yeah. And I don't quite understand. I guess it's just different materials, right? And different manufacturing process to do it. And so... I mean, I would. Who'd have thought that cement is bad for the environment?
Never occurred to me. I didn't know buildings are bad for the environment. Right? Doesn't a third of our problem come from buildings, houses, and big buildings?
Right. So and so I mean, I understand cars, right? I understand, fossil fuels, but I never knew cement was so bad.
Neither did I.
But some of the research, one of the companies that is at that Somerville incubator we talked about the other day, was taking money from the Saudis, and another Globe story that was a pretty controversial issue. Apparently, their contention and a ton of other companies that David Abel cites are pretty close to getting to the point where climate-friendly cement produced in amounts that can actually be useful and fill a huge percentage of the need is close.
This woman that's head of the chief executive of this thing called Sublime Systems, no surprise, an MIT spinoff. They've raised nearly $50 million in developing plans at its labs. Yeah, and Leah Ellis is the chief executive, she's a woman, obviously. So that's kind of exciting.
It is, and and just to show you that how long they've been working on it, I think MIT even has an institute, like the concrete.
Cement?
Yeah, concrete. They quoted it. It's like the concrete sustainability hub or whatever. They've been working on it for it looks like they've been working on it for more than a decade, looking for solutions.
So before you go, can we broach one other thing?
Very
Yesterday,
important.
we talked about the air fryer.
Right.
And it was the lead story in the Washington Post all day, above all the Trump stories, everything else. And we only had 15 minutes to talk, but essentially every texter and every caller described their love affair with the air fryer. Well, we didn't have time to get to because we shot our time in the bless you, Marjorie, was the Instant Pot, which used to be huge. It's only 12 years old. I didn't realize
that
it was
either.
only invented as recently on the market at 2010. Is going bankrupt, and while they may reorganize and it may continue to be sold, there's at least some risk that it may go the way of the dinosaur.
Right.
Are you an Instant Pot person?
I have
With young
it all.
kids.
I have an Instapot, which is one of these pots where you can pressure cook, you can slow cook. I also have a slow cooker. I mean, part of what happened was during the pandemic, like the Peloton, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's stuck at home, everyone's cooking, not going to restaurants, so everybody bought an Instapot, and so there was a huge surge in sales of Instapot because people are at home, making their own food. But now people are back out, and just like Peloton, people are going back to the gym. And so suddenly Instapot sales have fallen. And
well,
so
it's also they make the point
times.
in the stories that I read that it's pretty obvious, at least to me. We only have 30 seconds left. Things like Peloton and Instant Pot, you're unlikely to buy a second one.
Right.
So they have to be constantly thinking about new markets, which obviously are much more limited.
Right, and reinvent themselves. And I think it's hard with Instant Pot because they've already kind of done it, right? They combined the pressure cooker and the slow cooker together.
What are you doing next?
Yeah, what do you do next? I guess you can come up with more cooking.
Do you think we should ask the governor about the Instant Pot too, or
ask her? Yes, ask her.
Tell us what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, the thing is, they look pretty sturdy, and like the bike, after you get one, you really don't need two,
exactly.
do you?
Yeah, I think the Instant Pot's going to go the way of the bread maker too. Remember the bread maker?
I had a bread maker.
I never got a bread maker.
It's in my basement.
I used to make it myself. The kneading was very therapeutic. You push it down, and push it out, pops
You've
up.
heard the story when Marjorie was at an ashram in California.
Yeah.
She
No.
swallowed the bread that she was baking because she was stoned
it
before it had risen.
Oh,
so it
no.
rose in her stomach, and her stomach almost exploded.
Yeah, it was.
Is that true or is that true?
It wasn't at the ashram. I
Where was
lived
it?
in a place where we made our own bread.
Did your stomach
And
almost explode?
I
yes
thought
or
my
no?
stomach was going to explode because I ate it. It was
Exactly.
still too hot, and
Okay, we got to go.
my stomach was expanding. Yeah, but I survived.
She did.
And here I am today.
Lucky for
We're
us.
speaking with Shirley Young, business columnist of the Boston Globe. Healey, the governor, is back with us after the break. You're listening to 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
More smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio. Right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And Hebrew Senior Life, a Harvard Medical School affiliate empowering seniors to reach their full potential with a wide range of services. You can discover senior living, healthcare, aging research, and more at allweareforyou.org. The phenomenal soprano Sandra Radvanovsky portrays a betrayed sorceress who will stop at nothing for vengeance. Don't miss the Met premiere of Medea on Great Performances.
GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
It's Romeo and Juliet tomorrow with live ballet from former ballet dancers and students from Tony Williams' Boston City Youth Ballet. We'll hear from conductor Cynthia Woods and choreographer Gino DeMarco, plus husband and wife duo Ruth and Bill Whitney. Ruth plays Juliet, Bill plays tuba in the orchestra and makes musical instruments. It's a special live Music Friday here at the Boston Public Library. All that and more ahead. Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. A 2-year federal investigation has uncovered systemic discrimination and excessive use of force by members of the Minneapolis Police Department, several of whose officers are now behind bars for crimes that led to the death of George Floyd, a black man killed during an arrest in 2020. Today, U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland describes some of the Justice Department's findings.
Based on our review of the data, MPD officers stop, search, and then use force against people who are black and Native American at disproportionate rates.
The City, Police Department, and Justice Department are now negotiating terms for a federal consent decree. The Police Department already is under a state consent decree to help eliminate its systemic problems. The White House is keeping expectations low as Secretary of State Antony Blinken heads to China. NPR's Anthony Kuhn reports from Seoul. Blinken is the highest-ranking Biden administration official to visit the country so far.
Speaking in Tokyo, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said Blinken's trip would be significant, but no breakthroughs are expected. Blinken may meet with Chinese leader Xi Jinping. Sullivan says Blinken will be working to manage U.S.-China competition and keep it from veering into conflict. Vigorous competition, Sullivan said, requires vigorous diplomacy. Beijing, though, believes the U.S. is trying to throttle it, not compete with it. Foreign Minister Qin Gang told Blinken by phone this week that if the U.S. wants to repair frayed ties with Beijing, it needs to stop harming China's security and sovereignty in the name of competition. Anthony Kuhn, NPR News, Seoul.
A new NPR PBS NewsHour merits poll out today finds that even after he was indicted by a Florida grand jury, former President Donald Trump is only getting more popular among Republicans. NPR's Domenico Montanaro has details.
It's a strange dichotomy and divergence that's taking place. The more Trump is in the news, and with each new indictment, he seems to further solidify his hold on the Republican Party faithful. The survey found that 3/4 of potential Republican voters say they have a favorable opinion of Trump, up 8 points since February, before the indictments in New York and Florida, and the $5 million civil judgment against him for sexual abuse and defamation. At the same time, independents are increasingly viewing Trump as toxic. 50% now believe he's done something illegal, a 9-point increase since March, and almost 6 in 10 say that he should drop out of the race. Domenico Montanaro, NPR News, Washington.
Multiple news outlets are reporting that jurors have convicted Robert Bowers for the mass shooting at a Pittsburgh synagogue in 2018. He was accused of killing 11 people and injuring 6 others. Sentencing phase takes place later this month. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon from the GBH Radio Newsroom. I'm Henry Santoro. Barnstable County's Fatherhood Program held a graduation event this week ahead of Father's Day. The 12-week course helps men reconnect with their children and focuses on principles like respecting mothers and providing financial support. Some participants attend as part of their probation assigned by local judges, while others take part voluntarily. Wayne Chafes is Chief Probation Officer in Orleans and has assisted the program for 25 years. He says one highlight is an exercise where participants write a letter to their fathers.
It's a little bit therapeutic, but it's also a situation that you take a look at. What do you want your kids to remember about you? Very, very powerful. And after the fathers read these letters, there's such an incredible connection between all of them in there. It's just unbelievable bond.
Barnstable County is the longest continuously running fatherhood program in the state. And, of course, Father's Day is this coming Sunday. And it looks like Fortune magazine knows what Jim Braude has known all along, and it's that Cambridge is the best place in the country to live. In its second annual 50 Best Places to Live for Families list that was released on Wednesday, Fortune says Cambridge rules the roost when it comes to education, aging resources, general wellness, financial health, and livability. And that's not to mention the city's contribution to cultural opportunities like museums and programming, along with, quote, charming historic buildings and cafes and boutiques. And it says the nightlife is pretty good, too. I mean, who doesn't love the Cantab or the Plow? 80 degrees in Boston.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investments in securities involve the risk of loss.
I'm Henry Santoro, GBH News 89.7.
Boston Public Radio. He is Jim Braude. I am Marjorie Egan. The applause you're hearing is for Governor Moore Healey, who just arrived here
You don't
at
know
the
that
Boston
it's for the
Public
governor.
Library.
Could be for us.
I don't think it's for us,
It's
Jim.
unlikely, but
I think it's for the governor. But anyway, the Governor Moore Healey just arrived here, and we're going to be taking her questions. We're not going to be taking her questions. Well, maybe you have a few questions. I'm not sure, Governor Healey.
Oh, my God.
We'll be asking her questions, and you guys have a chance to ask her questions, too, at 877-301-8970. By calls, by text, or at the homie mic right here in the library. I also want to mention we are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
And one last preliminary thing. Aiden, raise your hand, Aiden, our coworker. If you have a question and you're at the library, want to ask the governor, you go to Aiden. He will screen them. Happy Pride Month, Governor. It's great to see you.
Oh, happy Pride and happy Juneteenth.
Indeed.
Also, as we kick off. But yeah, it's Pride month indeed, and great to see you both.
Great to see you as well.
You know, speaking of Pride Month, you marched in the Pride Parade. You had a great pair of sneakers on there. We saw a picture of you in the globe. But and we think of Massachusetts as being very forward on Pride issues. But you have these incidents come up every once in a while where there was a middle school in Burlington where there was some backlash against Pride stuff, gay stuff, LGBT community. Bellricker City Councils who seemed not big on supporting laws that help gay, lesbian, trans people. So what do you make of that kind of dichotomy here?
Well, I guess a couple of things. One, it was great to be at the Pride Parade over the weekend. The Lieutenant Governor and I had a great time marching together, yes, in our Converse Pride sneakers. I think the crowds were overwhelming. Honestly, it was it was just really fantastic to see the numbers who were out. There was so much joy, so much celebration, and that was fantastic. And for me, Pride represents a time of joy and celebration of the community, and also a time to sort of recommit too, to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. And the fact of the matter is, right now in this country, there are over 500 bills being pushed in state legislatures that are anti-LGBT, that are homophobic, transphobic, that want to ban access to not only books, but also fundamental health care. And it's really distressing. I mean, and that coupled with efforts to ban the teaching of diversity and inclusion, right, in state colleges and universities. You see this happening across the country, and I think it's just really important that we be clear who we are in Massachusetts, that we're a state that protects people's civil rights, voting rights, LGBTQ plus equality. And in this moment, that's a competitive advantage for us too. If somebody doesn't want Disney in their state, Disney can come here to Massachusetts. We've got a lot to celebrate. We protect women's access to reproductive health care. We care a lot about matters of the climate and want to lead on that. We, have so much going for us as a state, and I think it's, something we've got to just constantly tout and reaffirm. And where we see instances, unfortunate instance the other day where a group of middle school students and staff had organized something for Pride, and then there were some other students, I guess, who took to destroying some of the Pride signs and the like, and engaged in chants that were really, really unfortunate. It's a teachable moment, in my view. It has to be. I mean, that kind of stuff can't be tolerated. It's just, we have laws here for a reason that protect against discrimination, and we've got to be really clear about that, who we are as a state.
Staying on a variation on a theme, Governor, if we can, before we get to the calls and texts and that sort of thing, about making the state as attractive as possible. Obviously, step one is showing tolerance and respect for all of our neighbors. You've been trumpeting since your campaign that making the state more competitive is also one of the ways to keep people here and bring people here. You filed a bill to cut taxes. The House of Representatives pretty much did what you wanted done. The Senate yesterday came out with their version, and from what I understand, earned income tax credit for low-income workers, renters, seniors, estate tax, they're pretty much on the same page. But you in the House wanted a dramatic cut from, I think, 12 to 5% on short-term capital gains. Again, it was in the House version, not in the Senate. One of the lead senators basically said it was a giveaway to the rich, that 80% of the benefit went to the top 1%. If the thing that survives the conference committee does not include short-term capital gains, do you sign the tax cut?
Well, we've got to take a look at whatever comes my way. Right now, things are in conference. I really hope we see tax relief. I put that in there, the relief for short-term capital gains, because Massachusetts is an outlier on that. We charge short-term capital gains at 12%. The feds charge it at 5%. And most other states are much, much lower, if at all. So that, coupled with the estate tax, we're one of only 12 states that even have an estate tax. These are things we need to do, along with other tax proposals that I put forward that are very targeted to support seniors, to support working families, to support children, right? And I think that there's a path there. So we're going to stay engaged and look forward to seeing what comes out of conference. But it's really important, Jim. I mean, the focus of our administration, 3 things: affordability, which part of that is driving down the cost of housing. We've got a new housing secretary in place. I announced a climate bank the other day, and we're going to use that as a financial engine to drive more affordable housing around the state. Number 2 is equity. There's an equity lens on everything that we do. And 3 is competitiveness. I talked about the values. I think as kids are thinking about where they're going to go to college next year, it matters whether or not you're sending your daughter to a state that either will or will not ensure access to reproductive health care. It matters if you're sending your child who is LGBTQ to a state where they are not or not going to be protected. That coupled along with, what we offer here in terms of the value proposition for innovation, for entrepreneurship, for human capital, intellectual capital. My job is to make sure, Jim, we are recruiting and retaining families, people here in our great state. That includes companies. I think there's a path forward on tax relief that will help a whole bunch of people move forward here.
2 very quick questions. That second element, equity, I don't want to speak for the Senate, but I will. They seem to be saying it fails the equity test when 80% of the benefit of that one provision goes to 1%. How do you respond to them?
I disagree with that characterization. There's a lot there in the bill, and we also put forward substantial investments in things like childcare, in workforce, in education, not just K-12, but also higher ed and vocational programming. So, my takeaway is there's actually a lot of consensus there. Between and among what we offered in the House and the Senate, and this is the process, right? This conference committee, and we'll continue to stay, engaged and at the table, and look forward to, hopefully seeing something that delivers on a number of things.
Our number is 877-301-8970.
Just one more quick thing before we go to the calls and the texts and the people here that want to ask questions. Governor Healey, the federal government has kind of cracked down on the right to repair law. Voters overwhelmingly voted back in 2020 to allow this computerized information to go to the individual. They're mechanics, so they don't have to go to the dealers because dealers are very expensive. And now the feds said they've warned car makers not to comply with this right to repair law. So are the feds right? Is this a dangerous thing for cyber attacks? If they're not right, what about the voters that thought this was great? I had my car in the shop yesterday. I was afraid they weren't going to be able to deal with the computer problems because it wasn't at the dealer.
Mm-hmm. Well, I haven't seen the letter. I read briefly about it. I think it's probably more appropriate for the Attorney General to weigh in on that, who handled the litigation. It was started, of course, in my time and all. So the specifics of that letter, the import of that letter, I don't know.
Okay.
I think talk to the Attorney General's office about that.
Let's take some calls. We'll get to you in a second, whoever I almost said. Diana, you're in West Springfield. You're on with the Governor of the Commonwealth, Maura Healey. Welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
We can indeed.
Yes. All right. Good afternoon, Governor Healey, and happy Pride. I appreciate your comments on that. My name is Diana Coyne. I am a school committee member here in West Springfield, Mass. We, along with school communities across the state, face many challenges, as you're aware. As we work to ensure educational access and opportunities for everyone, one of the overarching challenges I see has to do with overall mental health, not only for our students, but also our educators and staff. I'm hoping you can speak to areas the state is bolstering to provide additional supports to our school community.
Well, thank you so much for your call, Diana, and hope everything. Hello to all the great folks in West Springfield and Western Mass. Thank you for serving on a school committee. These are not easy jobs for some of the reasons that Diana mentioned. There's a lot coming at school committees right now, and I just appreciate those who are willing to serve. Your point about mental health is so huge, and recently in our budget we put forward more investments in mental health. We have up and running a mental health hotline, actually, for folks to dial into to get easier and more direct access to mental health providers. We've got a lot of work to do when it comes to mental health in this country generally. We don't have enough providers. We don't have enough easy access to needed services. I think targeting and directing mental health services, particularly to our young people who, everybody suffered through COVID, but the rates of anxiety, depression, in the past, even social media. I investigated that as Attorney General. The impact of all of this. There's so much coming at our young people and our educators as well. And so I think it's just a matter of more investments. That's why you saw increased investments in our proposed budget, and we certainly support that. The legislature, I know, and leadership cares also a lot about this issue. And we've got to find a way to make more providers available real time. So you shouldn't have to wait, weeks and months to see someone. And
Diana,
again, thank you for raising it, Diana.
Thank you, Diana. Appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
We have a text that wants to ask you a question. Governor Healey wanted to know if there's any way for the state to provide student debt relief, perhaps with an eye toward keeping graduates of Massachusetts colleges and universities from leaving the state. Let's make the state more competitive, the texter said. And I want to link this to something you just said about more money for childcare. We were talking before about this convention having moonshot ideas for Massachusetts to maintain their competitiveness, especially with high cost of living and people being able to work remote. They were talking about free childcare, which may indeed be a moonshot, but certainly cheaper childcare might keep graduates here and young people here. So with this debt relief that this texter is talking about, what about that? The college graduates leaving because they just can't afford it, and the young parents leaving because they can't afford it.
Yeah, I mean, it's real. Both housing and childcare in this state are really expensive for too many people, and this is about making life more affordable. So I talked about housing a little while ago, about our efforts to really increase production, both of new housing and also rehabilitation, renovation of existing housing. And that also has included us doing a state inventory of public land that we could look at to convert to housing. So that's a housing piece of this. The child care piece, it's why in our budget we put forward historic levels of funding for child care. But I think you see a lot of talk among employers now who are offering and making more child care available. We've got to have a better way of providing child care. Part of what we talked about in our budget was increasing some of the rates for child care providers. We need more child care providers. We put money in that would reduce the wait list for child care. But it is one of these things that holds people back from moving forward. And, I think that probably when it comes to college and student debt, I long supported the Biden administration's effort to relieve students of debt and former students of debt that still have boatloads of debt with them. We'll see what happens with the court. I know that one of the reasons we proposed Mass Reconnect, which is a proposal that we offered to provide free community college to anyone 25 years old or older, is we don't want the financing to keep people from entering or re-entering, in some instances, the workforce. And that's an example of that kind of recognition that education is just too out of reach for too many because of the affordability issue.
Can we do two follow-ups to what you just said? How about the imminent, it relates to getting people trained, how about the imminent death of affirmative action in higher education coming out of our anti-majoritarian Supreme Court? You've been working on this issue from what I understand.
We have been, and we convened a group of nearly 50 stakeholders, experts. Basically, our message is this. The Supreme Court is going to make a decision about admissions and the use of race in admissions shortly. We anticipate it will not be a good decision. It will be misguided, terribly misguided if that's the case. And we're not going to change course here in Massachusetts. It is really important that our schools, our private and public colleges and universities, continue to find ways to support diversity within admissions. We know it is better for students and what is happening on campus. It's also imperative to the kind of workforce we need to grow and train for a global economy. And the documented benefits of this are well established, but unfortunately the Supreme Court, based on conjecture right now, may not be inclined to see it that way. But that's why we as a state wanted to organize with our Secretary of Education and others a plan right now that in the event a bad decision comes our way, we're going to be prepared as a state to make sure that we're providing quality education and access to education for students across the state.
Do you support expansion of the court or term limits on the justices?
Oh God, I haven't thought about that in a long time.
Oh, yes, you have.
No, I actually haven't. I mean, the court is, and the Supreme Court is really, it's been really disappointing. You look at Dobbs, you look at any number of decisions that are just out of step with the majority of Americans. And that's why, to me, it's all the more important that states like Massachusetts really lean in where we can to what we can do, notwithstanding whatever the Supreme Court is doing.
You know, you mentioned housing, too. One more thing before we turn to the coals. My understanding is you also have this initiative announced in the last few days around climate issues and affordable housing. What's going on there,
This
Governor?
is so exciting, and I'm really grateful to our team. As you know, I appointed the country's first climate chief, and she, working alongside others in our administration, have devised this community climate bank. What it is a bank that we've set up that is seeded right now with $50 million in state funding that is there to attract more federal funding. As we know, the Biden legislation that's been passed includes about $1 trillion worth of climate money. So we're applying for that. So we take the $50 million, we hope to add to it federal funding that'll come our way from that. And importantly, Jim, private investment, private capital, because we want to make the math work here in the state. This bank is really going to be a financial engine for decarbonization efforts across our state. We're focusing in the first instance on affordable housing, building out affordable housing, retrofitting, windows, more energy efficient, solar. There's all sorts of things that we can be doing. Buildings contribute a ton to greenhouse gas emissions in our state, and in gateway cities and environmental justice communities in our state, they contribute up to 70 or even 80% of greenhouse emissions. So this is an awesome opportunity for us to use both federal funds and, importantly, private capital investment to grow affordable housing, to combat issues of equity, their disparities, I should say, right? And also to really, really just jumpstart a movement here on decarbonization. So we're super, super excited about it.
We were just talking to Shirley Leong about something that I'm wondering if you think a similar sort of bank with tens of millions of state dollars working with private investors, the conversion of empty downtown office space to residential housing so we don't lose our downtowns. Is that something you'd entertain?
I think everything should be on the table. I mean, we need to decarbonize. One of the things that we're looking at through the Climate Bank is how can we look at public housing right now? You think about public housing, and a lot of it just is not in good shape. So how can we do a better job of converting this public housing into more sustainable, resilient, decarbonized living situations? It's also why we're doing that inventory of state property.
Rick in Cambridge, you're on Boston Public Radio, and you're with the Governor of the Commonwealth. Welcome.
Thank you. Governor, the backlash against LGBTQ plus people is here in Massachusetts. And it's more insidious because it has infected some of our legislative leaders and the Department of Education. For example, as you are aware, the sex education bill has not yet passed. In addition, Commissioner Riley and the Board of Education refuses to act on the health education framework that was completed 4 years ago to replace the quarter-of-century-old framework that schools are still using. And they have refused to do that because even as our youth are experiencing a mental, emotional, and social health crisis. And it's actually been said that the reason the department doesn't bring it forward is because of the LGBTQ plus learning standards and the social emotional learning standards, which are the foundation of the entire framework. And this framework can facilitate emotional and social health.
Hey, Rick, we need a question. We need a question for the governor, please.
Yes, so Governor, I'm wondering what you can do to get this sex education bill passed and to have the Board of Education bring this new health education framework forward.
Thank you, Rick. We got it. We got it. Let's have the governor's response, Rick. Thank you for your call.
Yeah, I mean, it's already happening. So that's what we're doing. It's not the case that Commissioner Riley or that our education department is refusing to do this. In fact, they've been working hard at this. We will be out with it shortly. We actually don't think we even need the legislation. We're just going to do it through the Department of Ed. It's importantly going to cover not only some of the things that the caller was referencing in terms of making sure we have age-appropriate curricula related to sex education, health education, but also education related to mental health, related to gun violence, all sorts of things. So this is the Healthy Youth Frameworks curricula, and we'll be out with it soon.
Yeah, but speaking of one thing that Rick mentioned, I misunderstood the original story about the legislation that was pending. I thought it would mandate, which makes sense to me, sex education in every one of the 351 cities and towns. In fact, all it did is mandate that there be certain standards in the communities that wisely choose to give sex education and do nothing in the jurisdictions that don't do sex education for their kids. Why shouldn't we have mandatory sex education in every appropriate school setting in Massachusetts?
Well, we should, but I also think that what we're going to do through the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education is going to achieve that. So it's not to say that
it would make it mandatory?
It's not to say you don't support legislation, but also, if we've got authority through a regulatory regime, we've been working hard on this, and we could do that, and others can consider legislation out there. But, look, I'm the daughter of a school nurse. I understand how fundamentally important health education is, and I understand how important it is that, we continue to make sure that we are exploring and pursuing all education that's going to be beneficial to the social, emotional, physical, mental well-being of young people who are educated in our schools around the state.
I think there's a curriculum question from what I just got a note from the floor. Is Mona here? Mona, you want to go to the mic? You're on with the governor of the Commonwealth. That'd be Maura Healey. Hi, Mona.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for taking my question.
Sure.
My name is Mona. They had to do a mic adjustment for me. My name is Mona Roy. I live in Lexington and have had numerous roles in educational and health justice education issues for decades. So it's good to see you, Governor Healey, and happy Pride Month. It gives me great joy to be able to say that to you.
Thanks, Mona.
Despite Massachusetts being the center of educational excellence, our public school curriculum continues to be Eurocentric, incomplete, and a little tone deaf for engaging in what is increasingly a world without borders, never mind our own diverse communities. So it's not surprising that we continue to have racial divides, struggle to retain or attract BIPOC educators, and have our students across racial demographics fully prepared to compete in the global 21st century economy. And it leaves people less invested in our public school system, which is frankly a threat to democracy. We must address these gaps and recently introduced legislation in the State House, an act to promote racially inclusive curriculum, S288, H542, will do that by providing support, a trust fund, and direction to DESE to develop and implement a racially and ethnically inclusive curriculum at our K-12 public school education. What will you do, Governor Healey, to support the passage of this legislation?
Well, thanks for your question, Mona. I haven't seen it, so I'd have to take a look at it. What I do think is important, a couple of things you noted, the importance of making sure we have educators of color in our schools. We know that the statistics show that students of color will perform better when there are educators of color in their classrooms, and that's something that we need to support. It's part of what is in our budget proposal, actually. How do we work to increase opportunities both for education, for prospective educators, and then supporting them in the position. So, that's something I just wanted to lift up in your comments. As I said, there are certain states right now and governors who are signing laws that ban the teaching of discussions of race and racial history. I've said for a long time, Black history is American history. In the face of the actions by other governors, who are signing laws that ban DEI positions and teaching in our colleges and universities. I've said that Massachusetts will stay strong and stay the course. We need to continue to have those positions, to have that curricula, to have those conversations. And obviously, I'm happy to look at any legislation that's out there proposed.
Can I just say one thing about this? I actually did a little reading about this week. I'm really glad to hear about the legislation around the teacher diversity. But a lot of literature...
Budget proposal.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
A budget proposal.
Yeah.
A lot of what I read said that teacher diversity without an inclusionary curriculum gets the teachers in and then discourages them to the point that they leave, meaning it's hard to have one without... I guess what I'm saying is that we can continue this discussion next month once you familiarize yourself. That'd be great.
Absolutely. And you should have Pat Tutwiler on sometime. He's our new Secretary of Education.
We'd love to.
Terrific.
We'd love to.
He's really, doing a terrific job.
Great.
Yeah.
Let's go to Raquel on Cape Cod. Hey.
Hi, Raquel.
Hi, two things. I love the signs on the Route 3, the mass signs that say Happy Pride Month. I think I don't know if you have any part of that, but that's awesome.
I don't know either, Raquel, but that's nice to hear.
Yeah, it's awesome. Secondly, New York Times this morning, let me take you off speaker. New York Times this morning says New Jersey is the first state to require all grades learn about climate change. The focus is on problem solving rather than doom. Can we implement that into our curriculum?
Yeah, I think it's something worth considering, and I don't know legally, what we have right now in the state, but I do know, it's something that I've talked about with our climate chief, who's talked to our Secretary of Education. I think educating on climate, there's a huge capacity. I mean, the number of young people I meet for whom this is the issue is really, really staggering and also hopeful. And so, teaching about climate, teaching about also look at all the job opportunities as we think about how we're going to build a more sustainable, resilient, and livable future in our communities. There are so many opportunities in a blue and a green economy, and we support funding to make those opportunities available. One of the things that I proposed recently was Mass Talent, which is, a really intentional program where we're going to do all we can to supercharge people getting into jobs in 4 areas. One of those areas is climate and clean energy, and there's just a lot that we can offer our young people that way. So thanks for your question, Raquel.
Thanks, Raquel.
While we're on the climate change, and forgive me if you already asked this, Jim, because I was reading the emails to make sure I wasn't missing anything. But have you talked yet about your green bank?
Yes.
You already talked about that.
I did.
Okay.
It's a great thing. First of its kind in the country. Other states have had green banks or climate banks. No one has established a climate bank that is, in the first instance, focused on the development of affordable housing and addressing environmental injustice in the housing space. So we're really excited about that. And as I said earlier, for every public dollar contributed, and we're putting up $50 million right now, it tends to attract, between 7 and 14 additional private dollars, which is, that's how we're going to have this supercharging. That's how we're going to make this the financial engine that's really going to help us meet our climate goals and engage in the kind of decarbonization that we need to as a state. Also, I was just talking to my Energy and Environmental Secretary this morning, and she's convening another meeting with our Northeast states, because so much of the work we have to do, and I love her forward thinking on this, is we've got to engage as a region far more around planning, around transmission and grid and infrastructure in order to be able to make that move to renewables.
Before we take a break, one of the things that I think I speak for Marjorie, we've been appalled by through the years is how some governors, Mitt Romney in particular, bragged about doing no pardons in his time. Other governors do pardons with about a minute and a half left in office, so there are no consequences for doing something that may not be wildly popular. You made a little bit of history, at least the first time in a bunch of decades, with some actions you took in recent days. Can you share that with people before we take a break?
Yeah, I was really pleased to be able to recommend pardons for 7 individuals yesterday. They now will move on to the Governor's Council, and I hope they'll be approved. But I'm grateful to my legal team in our legal office, as well as the folks in our Executive Office of Public Safety. These are folks who had convictions, many of them many years ago, many when they were very young, and the fact of their conviction has held them back from getting certain jobs, certain positions, and they just want to be able to move on with their lives. People should read their backgrounds. It's incredible the ways in which they've gone in to live exemplary lives of community service, public service in some instances. So yesterday, invited them back to the State House. Some of them, 2 gentlemen were with us, and there's a lot of things I get to do as governor. The power of clemency is a responsibility that I take very seriously as somebody who is both a civil rights lawyer and a former attorney general. And I have said that justice delayed is often justice denied. And so when presented with these recommendations, it was a no-brainer for me to act on them.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think one of the stories I read about involved a person that was convicted of simple assault as a teenager.
With a friend horsing around.
Yes, and couldn't get a permit to work in a security position because of that, or couldn't get any kind of law enforcement position because of that.
Right. He's been working at Boston Water and Sewer for 30 years. He's really active in his church. He takes a lot of kids out of state on basketball tournaments and mentors youth. And he's a wonderful person. And yet this conviction, by the way, his friend at the time, who he was horsing around with, never wanted to press charges, has supported his pardon. They've remained lifelong friends. But that conviction has kept him from pursuing a law enforcement career and one in private security. And now, he will hopefully, with the Governor's Council action, have that relief. And, this is about making sure our criminal justice system is more fair, more equitable. And, I recognize, I guess I'm told that it's the first time a governor has done pardons in their first term since Governor Weld. But, and I was asked how many more I expect to do, and my answer was as many as justice requires, and that is going to be our approach.
Before we do break, do you ever go on that Sunday morning, I can't think of the name, I'm not being disrespectful, the Sunday morning television show where they do quizzes of politicians? What's that? Channel 5, right? Oops, whatever the name is, wonderful show. So we don't do quizzes for politicians here, we're going to do one. We discussed this with Shirley Leung and a person who works for your administration earlier in the show.
Okay.
Hopefully you weren't listening.
This is one of Jim's many obsessions.
Okay, can a person like me drive in a bus-only lane, Governor Healey?
When there are no buses
Excuse me,
sight.
who's asking the question? You or
I'm
me?
adding an important addendum.
Okay, can a person like me, Governor Healey, get nervous? You are getting nervous,
No,
right?
I just...
Do you know the answer? Can I drive in a bus-only lane?
You shouldn't be there for buses, right?
But am I legally allowed to?
I don't think you're supposed to. I've seen police pull people over for driving in the bus lane. Now, when you go to make that right turn, right, you're going to inevitably have to go into the bus lane. You're going to do so, Jim, carefully. Also, we got to look out for the bicyclists because there's a bike lane.
Absolutely we do.
Yeah.
Right? But, as a general matter, you're not. Those are going to be for people who are really trying to commute. Right?
Well, I want to say, I hate to offend you, the answer is bzzz. Our understanding, we don't want to get the person fired, so we won't say who in your administration told us. Our understanding is that it is legally permissible,
As
which I
it
am
should be.
disgusted by,
It's
that you
great.
can drive in a bus. Can you check this out? And
I'm going to check that
I
out.
knew you would.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Governor Healey, I'm not a political consultant, but I don't know if you want to keep people from driving the bus lanes where there's no buses in sight. That's all I can say. Washington Street, very crowded street, no buses. We all know the buses. Long periods of time
we gotta
between the
take a
times
break.
the buses. Could be 15 minutes, could be 20
Thank you.
minutes. I don't know. This could sink or swim.
Is this you? Are you driving on
Well,
Washington
I have
Street?
once or twice. Once or
Amen.
twice.
We got to take a break.
Only
Margaret.
on Washington Street. Okay, we're talking with Governor Maura Healey. She's going to stay with us till the top of the hour for BPR's Ask the Governor. You can reach Maura Healey by phone or text, or you can ask her a question at the homie mic here in the Boston Public Library. The number again is 877-301-8970. We are streaming on live at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
It's been 1 year since the Supreme Court's reversal of Roe v. Wade put abortion rights across the country in jeopardy. I'm Adam Riley. This week on Talking Politics, we look at what Massachusetts has done since then to protect abortion access and what's still up in the air. Plus, Boston City Council President Ed Flynn on his push to bring back in-person meetings and bullying at Boston City Hall. Join me for Talking Politics tonight at 7 on GBH2 and online at gbhnews.org.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And National Grid, providing access to electric heat pumps, which offer heating and cooling for businesses of all sizes to help them achieve their sustainability goals. You can learn more about heat pump technology at ngrid.com/future. And New England Conservatory's Preparatory School, committed to providing students with a supportive environment that nurtures talent, fosters community, and embraces all interests and abilities ages 0 through 18. More at necmusic.edu/prep.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, much more importantly, Governor Maura Healey is here for Ask the Governor, which she does kindly once a month at the Boston Public Library. If you want to talk to her, lines are full at 877-301-8970, but you can text the governor.
That's right. I'm reading them
and
furiously.
Marjorie will read the text.
You have a lot of texts,
furiously.
Jim. I'm behind.
Do you want to read one, or should I go to the calls?
Well, go to the call. We have someone in the homie mic.
We do?
Yes,
Okay,
we
great.
do. We have Bill in the audience.
Hello,
he
Bill in the audience.
He has a question about a home buyer Bill of Rights, and he's making his way to the microphone right now.
Hey, Bill.
Marjorie, thanks for setting up that question, because Governor Healey, like you, I was an athlete at Harvard. I enjoyed playing defense, and I know that's what you excelled at the Attorney General's office.
Wait, we need the governor's mic turned on here. Here we go. Go.
What was your sport?
I was a free safety.
Oh.
So housing, as you know, in our state is anything but free. In fact, we have an epidemic of bidding wars. And yesterday, Jim and Marjorie pointed out that some of those are actually fake bidding wars. They use the word faux. So you may know that the U.S. Department of HUD has issued a blueprint for a tenant bill of rights. More recently, the Biden administration has issued a blueprint for an AI bill of rights. I would submit that we need a homebuyer bill of rights at the intersection of AI. So can your housing czar make creating a homebuyer bill of rights for the 21st century a priority?
Well, why don't we do this? And it's Bill, right? Yes. Yeah. Thanks for raising the topic. Why don't we take it back and talk about it and talk more about what that might include, right? In terms of, I'm sure you have ideas, Bill. Appreciate it. Thank you.
By the way, I want to correct.
And I really want to underscore, we're really trying to drive housing right now in the state. I know it is a top concern of so many. We've got rents that are too high. We got housing prices that have really put housing out of reach for so many, not just first-time homeowners, but also people can't afford to downsize right now. It does go to the livability of our state. It does go to our competitiveness, and I don't want to give people reasons to leave our state. And so we're really trying to look at what are all the different ways we can incentivize, leverage financing, stack some options together to grow and create more housing. Not just in greater Boston, but around the entire state. And, the point about that you're making is different, but also related to what we need to do as we consider, how costs are just rising for too many. So thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Speaking of housing, we have several people that have texted about this. I'll read from Tony in Worcester. He wants me to ask the governor why you appointed Ed Augustus to a housing position when he presided over a period of ever-increasing rents in Worcester. And according to Tony, but you can react to this, Governor, this gentleman did nothing to provide affordable housing. He wants to know about, we've seen a lot of this in the Globe as well, questioning this appointment.
I'm very proud of my appointment and grateful that someone like Ed Augustus, who is the city manager in Worcester, has taken on this role of housing, Secretary of Housing and Livable Communities. It's very intentionally named. Ed Augustus, as city manager, oversaw tremendous growth in Worcester, including the most significant levels in growth for affordable housing in Worcester. So I fundamentally disagree, which is fine, with the caller's characterization. And I can tell you Ed is really, really hard at work looking to grow housing around the state. And as I say, this is not just new housing starts. It's also, we've got a lot of old housing stock in the state. That includes public housing, but it also includes, mills and buildings. And particularly as you move central and western Massachusetts, there's a lot of property there that could be, converted if rehabilitated, renovated in the right way. Right now, everybody knows inflation the cost of all this, the cost of making this work for developers, that's part of what I'm doing with the Climate Bank, because again, buildings are a big contributor to greenhouse gas emissions, and anything that we can do to decarbonize the building landscape by creating and building more sustainable, resilient, and decarbonized housing solutions is going to be such a win for us on so many levels. And we have that opportunity now.
Governor, we read the other day that the state improperly used $2.5 billion of federal funding under the Baker administration to pay for jobless claims, which puts you in a hell of a pickle, as someone might say. What are the options for other than the feds choosing to forgive this? What are the options that you're considering to deal with this?
Well, we continue to be in conversations with the U.S. Department of Labor on this, and I'm hoping that we can work something out that minimizes any impact to the state or to employers. What happened here is that it appears that there was money drawn from a federal account to pay for claims. These were actually claims that were legit. I mean, the money was rightly paid out to people who qualified for pandemic unemployment assistance. There's a question about whether it was taken from the right pot. Now, it's also the case that during this time, and we're not the only state who's dealing with some of the process and how things were done. Remember, this was a time when a lot of states, and Massachusetts was looking to get money out the door to people. Sure. The feds and the Department of Labor were changing program requirements as it went. So it wasn't the most perfect scenario, but we've been transparent with the U.S. DOL, and we're going to continue to work with them to do all we can to make sure there's no impact to the state or that it's minimal.
What if they're not in a charitable mood? What do you do?
Well, again, there are many states facing this, and in fact, DOL itself had audited and looked at this and approved the process that the state had used. So, we'll let those conversations continue, and I'm hopeful that we can get to a good place.
Stephen Lowell. Is that Stephen Lowell?
Stephen Lowell.
Stephen Lowell, thank you for calling.
Welcome, Steve.
Thank you. And Governor, I volunteer for 350 Mass of Greater Lowell, and we want to thank you for the there's a lot of echo from the library.
Oh, you sound fine to us, Steve.
Sorry. Okay, sorry.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So, Governor, we want to thank you for the steps that you've taken regarding climate change, and yet the MSBA policy regarding the replacement of school infrastructure, old fossil fuel school infrastructure with new fossil fuel infrastructure is really discriminatory. The city of Lowell has just been forced to spend $15 million on new gas-powered heaters because they were given no options. And yet the city of Andover, just down the street in the same position of having to replace their furnaces, said this is so bad, it's so unhealthy and so dangerous and so much more expensive, we're not going to take the MSBA money, we're going to use our own money and do the right thing. But poor communities like Lowell can't afford to do that, and they're forced into investing in fossil fuel infrastructure that's going to last another 30 years. And it turns out this is going on all across the state.
So the question, Steve, is what, please?
The question is, Governor, how can we meet our fossil fuel goals in Massachusetts if the MSBA policy is requiring the installation of more fossil fuel infrastructure?
Is that school building assistance? Is that what SBA stands for?
It's something under the Treasurer's Office, the Massachusetts School Building Authority,
Authority,
and it's a way that school buildings are financed around the state. Well, first of all, Steve, I appreciate the call. I love 351, by the way. You guys do incredible work, and I'm proud to support the efforts there. And in terms of this, let me take it back to the team. As I say, I don't have direct control or control at all over the MSBA, but we certainly want to support a move towards a renewable future. I was just talking about building an infrastructure. So let me take that back.
Steve, thanks. We appreciate your call.
Let us go now to Judy in Worcester.
Hi, Judy.
Hi, Judy.
Hello. I am so happy that Governor. Oh, maybe I need to change my.
It's okay. The feedback is. I think it's our fault, Judy. Don't worry about it.
Go ahead, Judy.
So, I am so glad, Governor Healey, that you're the governor of our state. I am Pastor Judy Hanlon, Senior Minister at Hadwin Park Congregational Church, United Church of Christ. I am also the co-founder of the LGBT Asylum Task Force, which houses and feeds LGBT asylum seekers coming to the U.S. from the nearly 80 countries where it's illegal to be gay. We are the only organization in the United Church of Christ, in the United States of America, that houses and feeds LGBT persons. We've outgayed San Francisco and every other place, and we're on the west side of 495. Who could imagine that? But our folks are now getting very scared. They're traumatized, they've been abused, and they are wondering what is going to happen to LGBT persons. I had one black man from Uganda say, Pastor Judy, when I walked the streets in Uganda, nobody knew I was gay. When I walk the streets in the United States, everybody knows I'm black. I'm wondering about going back. So this is an issue of immigration, racism. We have a lot of Muslims that are being attacked. And I guess I'm asking, what can we do? What can I do to even help you in these things? Because I believe in the separation of church and state, and I believe that religion is the cause of all of this hate, I'm sorry to say. And I want to be helpful to you, but I wonder, is there anything, and I think you've said it all, but is there anything else we can do together?
Well, thank you so much, Pastor Judy, for your call, and thank you for the work that you do. I think we're all in this together, and I have spent time with many of the folks that you work with and care for, and I'm incredibly sympathetic to the plight that they faced in their country of origin, and they are here looking to secure a safer future for themselves and their families. It is certainly the case that there continue to be acts of bigotry and discrimination and intolerance in communities and in places in the state and around the country. So what do? I think we just need to work together, both in educating and also making sure that laws are enforced. You referenced an incident. Make sure that those incidents are reported to law enforcement, whether it's to local police or the Attorney General's office, who I know will take these things very seriously. Let's continue to find ways to support our immigrant communities, particularly those who are here fleeing persecution, fleeing abuse. And I think the final thing I'd say is, right now in this moment, I too understand and appreciate the separation of church and state. That said, there's much we can do and must do together, utilizing, state resources as well as clergy and congregations and parishes, whether we're talking about the migrant situation right now, where we have, incredible numbers coming into our state and people who need medical attention and housing and all sorts of care and need, or on other issues. And so, I'm somebody who welcomes those partnerships and those collaborations. And I'm happy to have you talk more if you want to give your contacts, because we can follow up specifically on some of the work we're trying to do in the greater Worcester County area, Judy, and I'm sure you'd have some ideas.
Yes. Pastor Judy, stay on the line and we'll take contact information and share it with the governor's office. Thank you for your call.
We have an audience question from Lynn. Is Lynn there? Here
Hi,
she
Lynn.
comes.
Welcome.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Governor Healey.
Hey, Lynn.
I've worked hard to be able to say Governor Healey, and it makes me proud to see you up here and to have you as my governor.
Thanks, Lynn. It's great to see you.
It's great to see you, too. Happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
As you know, because we've talked about this over the years, I work in the field of human services, and I work with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. We are at a crisis point in that field. I'm from the Edinburgh Center. That's my shirt here. We marched in Pride. We're trying to get more staff. It's almost impossible to hire staff right now. The rates that are set by the state, we just gave an increase to our entry-level staff, $17.75. You cannot live on $17.75 an hour in this state. Most of the staff I work with work 2 or 3 jobs.
Where are they working typically?
In group homes from Waltham up through Tewksbury.
Mm-hmm.
And, we've got group homes for people who have significant issues, both autism, medical problems, behavioral problems. I've been there 33 years, and this is the worst I've ever seen it. And I don't like to use the word crisis lightly, But I go to bed at night and wake up worried about the people I serve. We're this far away from something really bad happening, and bad things have happened. We have created a really cool new initiative called Meaningful Whole Life that really helps people thrive, and we created it during the pandemic, but we can't keep doing it if we don't have staff.
Yeah.
So I just ask, I know that you're doing everything that you can for workers all over the state, but I just ask that you remember who I call my sheroes and my heroes. These are people who during the pandemic went in every single day into houses where people were positive with COVID. We had 5 individuals die and 1 staff, and they just kept coming. They didn't have anybody cheering for them by the side of the road. Nobody was banging pans. These are low-income workers. These are mostly people of color. These are mostly immigrants. And they deserve the respect that everybody else in the state who did the kind of work during the pandemic that they did. And they deserve a living wage because the work they do is very complicated. They've got to do medical appointments. They've got to deal with behavioral issues. It's not just caretaking. So
I appreciate you making that comment. It's not only work that is complicated, it's also incredibly important. And they're caring for some of the most vulnerable among us. It goes to what we value too, and right now you can make more money working at Amazon, at Target, than you can caring for the most vulnerable among us. And so, there's work to do on that. I've already proposed some increases to salaries and to rates, but more work to do. And I thank you for lifting up our human services workforce and the work that they do. And I know that our Secretary of Health and Human Services actually is focused on that right now.
Yep.
Absolutely. Yep. So thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn, thanks for being here. We appreciate it. Governor, earlier Marjorie permitted me to raise one obsession of the day. If I can raise the second one briefly. You and I talked last month about rent control. I'm not going to bring up rent control, but your response to my concern that the legislature was going to act in, yet again, an anti-majoritarian way. The people of Boston support local option rent control. The people of the state do. You say, in principle, you do. And when I said the legislature is going to kill it, you said, give it time, let's see what happens there. I want to step back from that. The reason someone in Springfield or Fitchburg can decide whether Boston has rent control, which its elected leaders want them to have, is because of these home rule petitions. And I guess the notion that the state has to approve certain things, even if it has no effect on anybody outside a certain jurisdiction. Would you support reforms, whether they were statutory or even constitutional, that took away some of the authority of the state to frustrate the will of the people in individual communities?
Boy, I haven't thought about that. I've said on the issue of rent and proposals around that, we'll take it in due course.
Sure.
As that comes forward, and I certainly support the right of communities to do what they need to do. So, let me think more about that.
Well, how about then not to forget the specifics? How about the concept of, again, a state rep in Fitchburg deciding whether Boston or Worcester or whatever.
You forgot to mention how many of the legislators are landlords, some of them big-time
Right, we
landlords.
talked about that. But right, exactly, as the Globe brilliantly reported. But conceptually, how do you feel about people who have nothing to do with the jurisdiction being able to cast a veto over the popularly endorsed decision-making of the local community?
It's the way we have it right now. I think it's a much longer and more complicated discussion, really, maybe we can talk further about it down the line. But
can we?
So we can. It's just not something I'm focused on right now at all. I mean, it is the system that we have here. 351 cities and towns, and it's the way things have operated for a very, very long time. People like their local control and an ability to do certain things in their communities. It's also the case that we do have certain state standards and uniformity, and I'm sure there's a balance in all of that.
Peter in Saugus, you're next. Hi.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you for taking my call, and thank you, Governor Healey, for this time. I'm calling specifically about the Wynn incinerator on Route 107 and their desire to expand an ash landfill in an area of critical environmental concern, something that is not allowed under state regulations. I'm wondering, and thank you for Rishi Reddy, who's been wonderful with her environmental justice group and meeting with us. We're hoping that your administration will stay firm and not waver on the requirements that no landfill can be expanded in an area of critical environmental concern. Currently, the wind incinerator is taping Saugus with donations and dollars and using a lot of political muscle to try to influence the process. And my question to you is, will your administration stand firm and prevent the ACEC regulations from being amended to allow for the expansion of an unlined ash landfill that contains mercury, lead, and other heavy metals?
Thank you, Peter.
In an area of critical environmental concern. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Peter. And you alluded to someone on my team. I'm glad you've had a good working experience with them and the folks at our EEA, Energy and Environmental Affairs Secretariat. I honestly have to go back and talk to the Secretary, Peter, because I don't know the details on this. But I'm glad you're having dialogue. That's important.
Can we get some contact information from Peter?
Yeah.
Peter, stay on hold and we'll pass it along to the governor's office.
I was
Thank
just going
you.
to say, when Lynn was talking about the poor wages, and there's a lot of people in the helping communities, daycare workers, et cetera, poor wages, preschool teachers. We did this story yesterday about how you need to make $40 an hour in order to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in most of Massachusetts. And the point of the story was the housing has gone through the roof and the wages have not kept up. And a lot of that has to do with state reimbursement, too. There's this, you just can't get reimbursed for a lot of the work. So it seems like we're reached almost a breaking point. You know
I mean, the money that the state spends a lot of money. The problem is right now, I mean, with rents and things are the way they are, it's really tough on a lot of people who have access to vouchers. Even finding places for people right now that work with the math is really tough. Which is also, I go back to, we need more housing. We need more housing in the state.
Jennifer,
Before you go, go ahead.
Do we have time for one more?
Well, I was going to ask a question I think would interest people.
Another obsession of yours?
No. What do you think about the center for the Denver Nuggets?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
A little bit bigger than you, but he's a pretty good ball player.
Oh, yeah, fantastic ball player, and they played really well and did what they want to do. And, it's still, I stopped watching after
so
the Celtics were out.
Me too.
You did, really?
I did.
Hometown team.
Should the Celtics?
Yeah.
Do you want him to keep Jaylen Brown?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah. And, we have strong hopes for next year.
Yes.
There's some work to do.
Yeah. Coach needs a little help, too, I think.
Well, he's getting some.
He's getting some.
Getting.
Okay.
Governor, we really appreciate your time as always. Thank you.
This is group.
This is the Cambridge Symphony Orchestra,
Yes.
and not only are they going to play brilliantly, they're going to dance in a few minutes. Ballet.
The orchestra's not going to dance.
Well, why are you keep
No, I
asking
understand.
me
They're ballet
questions? You should let other people enjoy the great arts. That's fantastic.
You got your obsessions out of your system now, Jim?
For today, I do. Yes, I do.
People don't want to hear any more from me.
Yeah.
I want to hear from them.
I think I said they don't want to hear any more from me. That is true. Governor, it's wonderful to see you.
Thank you
so
very
much for your time.
Okay.
Maura Healey.
Thank you.
Governor Maura Healey meets with us once a month to ask questions, to get questions asked of her, I should say. Why did I go that up twice in a row? Anyway, thank you very much, Governor Healey, for coming in and for making yourself available to the audience here and online and via text. Anyway, after a quick break, as Jim just said, we are in for a real treat. Live Music Friday is back. We're going to hear from the Cambridge Symphony Orchestra with a special in-person ballet performance excerpted from Romeo and Juliet, the great Prokofiev ballet. You are not going to want to miss this. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. And if you want to see it, we are streaming live at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News.
Jason Isbell and the 400 Units' new album is all about accepting, maybe even embracing, the uncertainty and complications of life.
I've always been the type of person who thought if there's a problem, I need to solve it. And sometimes your job is just to listen.
I'm Scott Detrow. Hear my conversation with Isbell on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Can I sit with you a while? Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Mass General Cancer Center, dedicated to providing compassionate care, and cancer specialists who are experienced in the cancer you have. When you hear the word cancer, their team is ready. Learn more at massgeneral.org/cancer. And Maine Maritime Museum in Bath, presenting Sea Change, an immersive art and science exhibition into the rich ecosystem of Cash's Ledge in the Gulf of Maine. Now through December. MaineMaritimeMuseum.org.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan. We're live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News. If you're not here, you're going to be sorry. And if you're not, I'd go to the streaming pronto. It's time for Live Music Friday on Boston Public Radio. Doing something with a segment we've never tried before, live ballet at the Boston Public Library. Obviously, there's some enthusiasm for it. If you're not here to watch, again, stream it. Tomorrow evening at 8 at MIT's Kresge Auditorium, the Cambridge Symphony Orchestra will be performing a rendition of Prokofiev's Romeo and Juliet. But it's more than just music. It's ballet, courtesy of some of the best in Boston. For information and tickets for tomorrow night's show, you go to cambridgesymphony.org. Joining us at our desk here is Cynthia Woods. Cynthia is the conductor and music director of the Cambridge Symphony Orchestra. Cynthia, it's great to have you. Thanks for being
having me here.
Plus, Gianni Gino DeMarco, former principal dancer at the Boston Ballet, a professor of ballet and movement at Berkeley, choreographer/production director for tomorrow's show, as well as this performance, and fellow yoga class attendee with Marjorie Egan, it turns out. A little later, we'll talk with the woman playing Juliet, Ruth Whitney, and her husband, Bill, who helped orchestrate the Union of Dancers and Musicians for the show. But right now, Cynthia and Gino, it's great to have you. Welcome to the show.
Yeah,
thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
We
so
heard
much.
you rehearsing this
Oh, my
morning, and this
God.
is going to be really fantastic. But I just want to ask you, is this unusual, like an orchestra, ballet, dance thing together? I mean, I know there's an orchestra, obviously, if you go to the ballet, but this is different.
This is different. We came up with this is the third time we've done this. We did Firebird about 10 years ago. We were scheduled to do this performance right before COVID, and then it got postponed. But we wanted to do it. It showcases the orchestra in its glory, not hidden under a pit, in its full 85 to 90 piece setting, and then we can see the dance as well. So it's a different way of telling the story that we're really excited about.
And Gino, everybody shares the stage, which I have to say I have not seen before.
Yeah, we all share the stage, and I think what Cynthia is talking about is that the dance is just complementing some of the beautiful music that's being played, and the musicians are being seen as like in a normal ballet performance when they're in the pit. You only see the conductor sometimes stick out the head and get the applause, even though all the characters that make the music are just sitting down in the pit.
Well, you're making it sound like it's just an issue of respect. I have to say, we go to the BSO a lot, Marjorie and I.
They're not in the pit.
And watching the players is as beautiful
it's a dance.
as watching. It is a dance.
It is a dance, yeah.
And so I love that you're doing. Is that what when I was reading, Cynthia, about the thing you're doing? The adjective that is used regularly is one I'd never heard before, semi-staged. Is that what does that mean?
Semi-stage means that it's fully choreographed, and we have costumes, and so it's staged, but we do not have sets. So there'll be some lighting, costumes, and front voice, but it's sort of like a ballet light.
And Jim just mentioned the BSO, and the BSO is fantastic, but it's not cheap. And the Boston Ballet is not cheap. But you are much more affordable, correct?
I think so, yeah.
We are, yeah. It's actually a part where our artistry and community in concert. And as a more regional orchestra, we have the ability, therefore the responsibility, to create access that is affordable. We are a frontlines arts organization. For many people, this is the only way they'll see a ballet or the only way they will see an opera. And we're really proud of that, that people come in for either $15 or $25, or they just can use their card to culture and come in for free if they need to do that. But we're really proud of that. We're affordable and accessible.
So can we do a diversion for 1 second, Gino? When Marjorie heard you were coming today, she said, Gino is in my yoga class. And believe me, I'll paraphrase, I have noticed.
Have
you noticed, Marjorie?
Yeah,
in your
I have.
joke?
Yeah, okay. We don't need any of that. We don't need any
What do you
of
mean?
that.
That's what
He has
people
a
want to
note.
hear.
She's a grateful yoga
That's
trainer.
right.
She is.
Yeah,
I bet she is.
But you know, it's
she
funny.
has the right outfits.
That's
She
right,
does?
the right
Yeah, she
outfits.
does, yeah.
That's right. But you know, the thing that you notice, and I'm looking at these two ballet dancers over here, and I'm looking at you. You can tell who a ballet dancer is because your bodies are different, and I know that there are injuries sometimes. But is that just what is that about?
It's the hours we spend just gratefully putting time into our bodies. You know, I think that starts to somehow show up somewhere. And hopefully that's a good thing.
Oh, it's a great thing.
But it's not just your bodies. We did an event for an organization called Silent Spring Institute from Newton that deals with hazardous chemicals in your cabin that you don't even know are there. And in addition to what we were doing that night, there were a couple of performers from some ballet.
I think it was the Boston Ballet.
I think it was the Boston Ballet.
We followed them up the stairs.
And we
it was
walked
really
behind
outrageous.
them. And even the way you move and they move in normal life, not on a stage, is dramatically different. That is...
It's true.
That's true.
It's true.
Cynthia's saying it's true.
Okay, Cynthia, maybe you could comment because I think we're embarrassing Gino over there.
I put in the spot.
Let's talk to Cynthia then. It's true, right?
So the first time I met Gino, we were meeting at the Kresge Auditorium in MIT, where everybody knows there's that huge quad in front of it.
Yeah.
And I said to our mutual friend Bill, I said, how will I know who Gino is? And I looked, he said, you'll know. And I looked up, and across the other side of the quad came this elegant man. You know, all the students kind of schlubby, kind of like
it's the posture.
And the posture,
yeah.
you know, gorgeous. And I immediately stood up taller, right?
Exactly.
And breathed it. And it's just the posture and the carriage, and it's such a. So we know that your dancers even.
Thank you.
Gino, how did
How
did this thing come together?
It came together through Ruth and Bill.
Who we're going to talk to in a minute.
Yeah, we're going to talk in a minute. I mean, Bill is involved in the symphony, so we had a conversation about having a collaboration of dance with the symphony as a token of dance with the symphony. We always have discussed this as dance being part of the production but not taking over the production, which I think is worked really well, you know, because we enjoy being part of it and not taking the whole grateful moment in time, just like we were talking about me for a second.
Well, we'll get off you for a second there, Gino.
So
but you do something with autistic kids. What's that about?
Yeah, I ran a program. I started the program at the Boston Ballet 20 years ago, and now I have a program at the Berkeley, a conservatory at Berkeley. And we work with autistic kids and Down syndrome kids. Actually, I also do a collaboration with United Dance, and we created a Nutcracker for the kids with Down syndrome. So, I mean, it's something that is developing in the city at this point. And you know, it's gratefully to dance that I feel like I've been able to connect these kids to the performing arts. In
Step
that
by
aspect.
step, is that what it's called?
Yeah, step by step.
That's
Yeah,
terrific.
yeah.
We looked up before, I know this will not surprise you, Cynthia. A couple of years ago, the New York Times did a story about women conductors, and other than maybe Lydia Tarr, 10% of the conductors, people who do what you do, are women in this country. Is that changing, or is this stuck in the mud kind of thing?
I think it's still very much a new thing. There's still a lot of change in process and thought that needs to happen in the industry. I think we know there's an issue because I think the image of the maestro as an old man with furry hair and stuff is so you know, so like if I come out as a blonde with a coral outfit on, people are like, she's a conductor, but I am, and I think we hope that that's going to get better.
What are we going to hear in a minute here, Cynthia?
We are going to hear two selections from the ballet. The first one is the bedroom scene just after they've been married and they're waking up. We picked these because there's not a lot of room to dance. And then the second thing that you'll hear in a few minutes is in the Tombs, and it's the death scene where Romeo kills himself.
Wait, is dance going to be in the first or the second?
Both of them.
Oh, both?
Both of them.
Do you want to say anything about the dancing,
Well, yeah, I
Gino?
just want to make sure you guys know that they're going to be dancing on this platform, or that it's supposed to be a tomb bed wannabe. You know, it plays both purposes.
Both purposes.
They're not going to be moving too much due to the fact that, you know, the space is limited, but they're going to express a lot of art, and they're going to express a lot of feelings. And the ballet, really, Romeo and Juliet is all about romance and saga and death. So they're going to demonstrate somewhat a little bit of that because we want everybody to come see the show. We don't want to give too much stuff away.
Okay.
You know, before we do this, even though there are a lot of members of the orchestra here, we don't like not introducing who the players are kind enough, particularly since they're volunteers, from what I understand.
They're wonderful volunteers.
Could you quickly run through who is joining us today, Cynthia?
Absolutely. In the back row, we have Brian Bunnell on cornet, Charles Williams on horn, Allison Eck on clarinet, Ariel Fulmer on oboe, Lisa Hensky on flute, Emily Jacobs on viola, Stan Ma on violin, and then Michael Sherman on violin, as well as Bill Whitney, Ruth's husband, on tuba, Stephen Kennedy on bassoon, and Rupert Huntz on cello.
That is pretty impressive.
They're a wonderful, very dedicated group of players.
I can say that there's Sabi Vargas and there's
Pleasure
Ruth
to have
Whitney here.
We're going to talk to Ruth and her husband in a couple of seconds. Are we ready to go?
We're ready to go.
Okay, you're going to take your place. Cynthia Woods is taking her position. And again, this is tomorrow night at Kresge Auditorium. We will tell you right now. In fact, I will. You get tickets and information at cambridgesymphony.org. Cynthia, it's all yours. Sexy, was it? Oh, my goodness.
Okay, we'll get Ruth and Bill over here.
Ruth and Bill are joining us. Yes, they are.
Absolutely. That was absolutely beautiful. And
I hope people are watching if they're not here. They were dancing, well, whatever. They're beautiful dancing on this very small platform. One of the dancers, Ruth Whitney, is joining us at this particular moment, as is her husband, who we are told is responsible for this sort of joining together of dance and music and that sort of thing. Welcome to both of you. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much.
That was
Thank
beautiful,
you.
Ruth. That was really beautiful.
So, Ruth, playing Juliet, dancing Juliet, I should say, that's like kind of a big deal. This is a very famous ballet, is it not?
Yes.
Yeah, and you've been dancing for years.
This is the second time I've gotten to dance this ballet.
Yeah.
The first was the first ballet a choreographer staged all on me. So this is a very special moment. I've been working with Mr. Gianni DeMarco for 20 years. So,
well, I'm going to ask you the same question I asked him, because it is true. And the posture, the body, everything is. You can. People must say this to you all the time. You can tell you're a dancer, and I know a dancer who's like in her late in life now, and you can still tell in her older years that she's a dancer. So, what is that about? Learning to.
Like he said, it's training our body. I mean, to show up here today, to lay on the bed, I do an hour of PT for my leg and then an hour and a half of class before I drive over here. Okay. So I worked out for 2.5 hours.
PT in your leg because your leg hurts?
My leg is, I have very little cartilage, or my knee is very, very bad, but I'm hoping that nobody will know.
Well, that's the downside.
That's
the downside of ballet, could be the injuries to your legs or your body.
If you dance correctly, you don't. But along the way, sometimes you cannot always do it correctly.
Okay.
Well, you did it beautifully, and we didn't know. So, Bill, you get credit for being the convener of all the bodies here, literally and figuratively. How'd that come about? What's the deal?
That's generous, but
true.
Right. A few years back, like Cynthia mentioned, when we were going to do Firebird, and Cynthia and I were talking, and she was like, it'd be so cool if we could actually do this as a ballet, like actually with dancers. I'm like, well, I mean, why not? And it really just started from that. And I talked to Ruth, and then we talked to Gino, because for the type of unusual presentation that it would be, there's really only one choreographer around who we were both like, yeah, this is the guy for this. And then that show happened, and then Midsummer happened, and more things, and here we are.
Could you tell us a little bit about what you do when you're not doing this? Because Marjorie and I were totally fascinated.
Yeah.
What is it you're spending your time doing?
Well, to be a full-time career musician means that you wear a lot of hats.
Mm-hmm.
It either means that you are the best person around at your instrument. I'm not that person.
Mm-hmm.
Or you wear a lot of hats. So over the years, I've been a high school band director. I've been an audio engineer for a video game company called Harmonix. If you ever heard of the game Rock Band, I worked on all those. I've done all kinds of things like that, and my main day job right now is I build percussion instruments. I have a small custom drum company called Calderwood Percussion. I build percussion instruments of all kinds, although our specialty is historical reproductions and orchestral instruments.
And where have some of those historical reproductions been used that we might know?
There's a show you might have heard of called Hamilton.
Hamilton, yes.
Also SpongeBob SquarePants, the Broadway musical.
Really?
And also the U.S. Army. So,
That's
some
fabulous.
stuff that...
But you also, I read, build an 8-foot bass for the University of Kansas. I mean, that's a totally different thing than building drums. So to tell, and some of these have been period pieces. Like if you build something for Hamilton, how is it different than how it would look if it were in 2023, the instruments?
So there's like, I do a lot of work for Handel and Haydn Society, right? And with
great.
stuff for them, they want to, as close to period accurate as you can get, both visually, the sound, also construction methods, everything. Hamilton's a really different animal, right? It's a very sort of anachronistic presentation of this period story, and the drum sort of has the same approach. It's got that sound and feeling of a period instrument, but it's built with the sort of modern concessions you need to be able to play in a Broadway pit successfully.
We had a harpsichord in here one day, and I forget, was it Handel and Haydn or something else? But
it was Aidan saying,
yeah, and I thought it was painted beautifully in the inside and the outside. So it's almost, to me, the difference between some of the buildings you see like in the Back Bay or in older parts of Boston with all that relief and the beautiful architecture as opposed to, just the recessed lighting and the plain wood floor.
It's a really different aesthetic approch.
Yeah.
Doing period stuff versus
And
modern.
how long does it take you to make a period set of drums?
It really depends. There's a lot of variables, but just generally speaking, to make one, say, Revolutionary War type military drum, there's like 20 to 30 hours in that, but it's kind of spread out over a long period of time because like varnish has to cure and glue has to dry, and it's, so I'll usually spend about 2 months on a drum, but the actual labor is, 20, 30 hours.
Just make sure you focus on the tuba for the next 36 hours, then we can worry about the drum. So Ruth Whitney, we were talking to Gino and Cynthia about what is least unusual for me to see a ballet with musicians on the same stage. What's that like for you as a dancer?
I love it because when you turn your face, instead of just seeing the back of the stage, you see the music, and we're so close to them that you can actually feel it. We got to do a show with Gino a number of years ago before collaborating with Cynthia, and I got a taste of being on the stage with these singers, and it was magical, and I thought I want to do more of this. The music just, it's a hear the dance, see the music. And
what's special about the Cambridge Symphony Orchestra? I mean, other than the fact that you're related to one of the players, what's special about them?
Well, I think, honestly, I don't know individual players very well. Everybody that I've spoken to is amazingly kind, but I think these productions with the Cambridge Symphony are profound because it's access to arts. And, I think from dancers who want the ability to train in ballet, which requires a lot, to people who want to consume art, which costs a lot and takes a lot of time, to be able to bring art to people, to have kids watch the show, to not have it be $300 to bring your family, I think is so necessary. So that's incredibly special. It's such a gift.
So one more question for you, Ruth. We know why Gino is special in the yoga studio. Why is he special in the world in which you have spent your life?
He is one of the most generous human beings I have ever had the privilege to meet. He just gives 110% all the time. And he walks into the room and everybody smiles, and the atmosphere, we can be working for 3-4 hours and people are joking, and I hope everybody can come see the show. I think his choreography with the fight scenes, like he puts feeling, he cares the most that we have a human experience and that we share that with the audience, that we don't say, look at this beautiful thing, that it's feeling.
Mm-hmm. Okay, one last question for me before you perform again. I want to know, Bill, did you meet in one of these romantic performances? I mean, did you?
Sounds like they met at McDonald's based on the laughter here. Go ahead.
We met at a goth club.
A golf club?
Goth.
Oh, a golf club. Oh, okay.
At
I
a
thought
golf
you said
club.
A golf club. I don't see you in the little red and pink and greens outfits.
Yeah,
And a
pretty
golf
much
club.
the opposite of golf, actually.
Okay.
So Ruth, you want to tell us what the second, remind us, Cynthia told us a minute ago, what's the second performance you and the players are going to be doing?
This is in the Tomb.
Speaking of goth.
So
That's right.
I have drunk something to pretend that I am dead in order to then go meet Romeo, but he misses the message and thinks I actually died. And so he comes and finds me like I am dead.
You know, before we do this, well, we had your fellow dancer introduced. Tell us a little bit about him, if you would, for a second.
About Sabi?
Yeah.
Sabi is fantastic. He is a beautiful partner. I danced with him in a show with Tony Williams, whose students are also performing.
Oh, I forgot. We should have said that. Tony Williams was here not too long ago with us, and that's the Boston Youth Ballet. Is that Boston City Youth Ballet?
It's Boston City Youth Ballet.
I think that's right, but go ahead.
So we got to perform in a beautiful work called Moore's Pavane, which is an old modern piece that dancers often don't get to perform today, and he stepped in to be the Moor, and it was so dramatic, and there's a moment where you fall back, and I think he didn't expect it, and I almost hit my head on the floor, but he was there, because he's that partner where he's just going to catch you. And
That's great.
He gives as much of himself, so I am really honored. This is really, for me, just a blessing.
Bill and Ruth Whitney, thank you. We really appreciate it. Ruth, you have to rejoin your partner there. And Cynthia and Bill, thanks. Good to meet you. We appreciate it. We'll see you at a goth club sometime in the future. And Cynthia, the table is yours again? Yes, it is. Cynthia Wood, here she is.
listening to the Cambridge Symphony Orchestra playing music from an upcoming performance of Romeo and Juliet at MIT's Kresge Auditorium. Thank you so much to music director Symphony Woods, choreographer Gianni DeMarco, Ruth Whitney, who plays Juliet, and Bill Whitney, who united the dancers and musicians to make this possible. For information and to get tickets for tomorrow night's show, go to cambridgesymphony.org. That's cambridgesymphony.org. And thank you all again for that wonderful, wonderful treat.
Gino and Cynthia, it's beautiful. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Okay, after a quick break, change in tone. This Sunday's Father's Day. We're doing a sort of potpourri, I guess, on Boston Public Radio.
Jason Isbell and the 400 Units' new album is all about accepting, maybe even embracing, the uncertainty and complications of life.
I've always been the type of person who thought if there's a problem, I need to solve it. And sometimes your job is just to listen.
I'm Scott Detrow. Hear my conversation with Isbell on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Can I sit with you? And the Children's Trust, managers of Safe Kids Thrive, helping youth-serving organizations keep kids safe from sexual abuse. Prevention plans at safekidsthrive.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News and facebook.com/GBH News. This Sunday, as you know, is Father's Day. We thought it'd be a good opportunity to check in on all the dads out there and what they're doing. A bunch of different angles to take on this. One big one of the fathers of the world stepping up after taking a backseat. They think they are, but are they right? Whether it's cooking, housework, planning activities, emotional support, any of the million other things required to raise a child. Fatherhood is theoretically evolving in America, and we want to know how it's changed for you and your relationship with your kids, or if you're a father with your father, or if you're a mother, or whatever you are. You can comment on the issue. 877-301-8970. By the way, there is a survey. Who did this thing, by the way?
I love this. I think it was Pew Research.
Pew. This is really depressing. They basically say the questions asked are when it comes to managing kids' schedule and activities, when it comes to addressing their basic
emotional support of the children.
Exactly. And the categories are mother does more, and fathers overwhelmingly think that's not true. Mothers think it is true. And when it comes to both about equally provide those things, fathers overwhelmingly think they do, and mothers, of course, say they are not. So there's a slight difference of opinion. The number's 877-301-8970.
But what do you think, Jim Browdy? Do you think fathers are more engaged and involved now than they used to be?
Well, they can't be less engaged than they used to be.
Well, your father was in prison, so he didn't have a
By the way,
chance.
can we do this? You know, he's dead, so we don't.
He is dead.
He did not go to prison.
He may be living in eternity,
He did not. My father did not go to prison. He did some unfortunate things.
Well, he didn't have a chance to be much involved in the raising of little Jimmy. So do you?
My parents were divorced when I was little. My father moved to New York, and I didn't see him that much. He was not a wonderful father.
You think you've improved?
I could not have done worse. Let's put it that way.
You could not have done worse than your father.
Yeah, I haven't done enough, but I've done more.
I should just like to point out, the first time I met Jim Browdy's wife, I, of course, complimented her on your two lovely daughters.
You've met my kids, yeah.
And without missing a beat, she said, well, he had nothing to do with it.
Thank you.
Meaning you, Jim.
Thank you.
I
really
love
appreciate
that. That made me very happy.
Thank Chris for that very much. 877-301-8970. So as Marjorie said, this is sort of a potpourri.
Potpourri.
It's reflections on fatherhood 2 days ahead of Father's Day. By the way, there's another piece to this. More than 4 in 5 dads, talking about surveys, determined to embarrass their kids by telling cheesy dad jokes. You want to know what the 2 most popular are?
Certainly.
I wouldn't even tell these jokes. They are pathetic. Here's the number 1. This graveyard looks crowded. People must be dying to get in. Thank you. That was a big response from the audience. Here's another one. Number 2. I'm reading a book about anti-gravity. It's impossible to put down. Thank you. Everybody's
are those
leaving.
The jokes
those are not mine,
dads?
by the way. Don't be angry. Those are dad jokes. I don't tell them. 877-301-8970. I have to say, we've had a lot of calls through the 24 years we've been on the air from parents, partners who have said, either about themselves or about their male partner, that the father is doing a lot of a share of the difficult work.
It's much better.
I've been more a chauffeur than an emotional sport
Yeah.
person. I'm not proud of that kind
Yeah.
of thing. It's much better, but it ain't even close.
It's not even close.
To equal. Is
It's
that a
not
fair
even close.
statement?
There was a great book written by Ollie Hochschild a long time ago.
Oh, yeah.
It was, I think, at the beginning of the aughts, as it were. And she talked the second shift. And the second shift was the shift that moms and most mothers are working now once their kids are out of babyhood, sometimes even when they're still in babyhood. And the second shift was what mothers work when they get home from the office. So they get home from the office, they get home from whatever job they had, wherever it was. And then they started the cooking of the dinner, the bathing of the children, the help with the homework, the help with the crises, the soothing when the kids were crying, the soothing when the kids had a cut or a scrape or whatever it was. And then, when they finally gets them to bed at 10 o'clock, then she starts doing her other stuff for herself, the laundry, etc. The point was, women were working hours longer every week on household things than husbands. And husbands think it's changed dramatically. And it has changed dramatically because, back in the day, as it were, husbands and fathers really didn't know who their children were. They mixed up the names and all that kind of thing. So it's gotten better, but it's not surprising to me that fathers think they're doing a lot more than they are. Having said that, my son-in-law, of course, is the perfect son-in-law, and he's very involved with helping with the baby. And
baby granddaughter?
I watch him, and I'm amazed. I think, wow, he's changing.
He knows
the
which side
diapers,
is up,
he's feeding
which is the
kids,
bottom.
He's doing all these things. So I think he's a lot better than his own father was too, who worked all the time. 877.
My father, once again, I just want to say, he was not a great father. He was not jailed. I just want to, you say that all the time. He was not jailed.
877-301-8970 is the number to call us and text us at. Who's doing more of the housework and the baby and child
Well, that's
care?
not a fair question. We know the answer. The question is, are fathers doing better?
Our fathers doing
significantly better than they used to?
Because there's the rare dad who is doing more. I think that's a very, very rare.
How was your
dad.
father, by the way? We're talking about mine. How was your father?
My father was gone from.
He was on the road all the time,
He was on the road.
right?
He was gone from Monday morning till Friday night. And he.
But you know what I heard?
He
In
didn't
all
know
fairness,
who I was.
No, in all fairness, I heard his other family. He was great. He was really. It's a horrible joke. I shouldn't. But it works.
Yes,
That's
he
like a dad
traveled.
joke kind of
Yeah,
thing.
he was a traveling salesman.
What was he? A tire salesman?
Worked for Firestone.
Tires.
He sold rubber.
Sold rubber?
That's what he did. Firestone made rubber, Jim.
So not just for tires? I didn't know.
Not just for tires. Rubber goes into gum. Remember the Super Bowls?
Sure, Super Bowls.
He brought us home all these Super Bowls. We all got rashes
That's
from the
really
Super
nice.
Bowls. It was a bad thing.
And he'd
But
say
anyway.
to you and your sister, I'm sorry, which one are you? Exactly. Let's go to Mary in a car. It's our fatherhood special for Father's Day right here on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
I think we're good. Thank you for asking.
Good, good. So as far as fathers stepping up, I don't know about that. My daughter's father's side of the family has an annual Father's Day get-together. They invite her every year. Every year she goes. She drives 90 minutes to get there each way, and he has yet to show up.
Oh. That is horrible.
Wait a minute.
Isn't it?
This is your ex-husband?
No, we were never married.
Oh, but it's the father of the kid.
But yes, and they do have a relationship, but he never shows up for this.
That is.
So this,
And how does she feel about that?
it must hurt her, but she's stoic, and she doesn't really reveal how she feels.
Wow, that's quite
That
sad.
if she's invited, she's not going to go.
That's terrible.
That is terrible.
That's terrible. I'm sure it hurts her a lot.
Well, she's
And
got
he's the
you,
only
Mary.
father.
What?
He's the only father in the family that does not show up for this event.
What's his excuse, Mary? Does he have one?
I think he just doesn't show. Sometimes he says he's tired from working.
Oh, God.
She works 70 hours a week herself.
Oh, my God.
Well, this
Mary,
guy
that's
sounds like
tough.
a hell of a loser, but Mary, you sound great, and thank you for sharing it, and we wish your...
And
Yeah.
I'd just like to say she's a remarkable kid. Everybody else in his family, just is so proud of her and everything, and it's awful.
Well, Mary, she sounds like a great kid, and you sound like a great mom, and thank you for the call.
You know, one of my favorite things the Boston
That's a
Herald used to
horrible
do, it's a
story.
horrible story,
What?
used to do is they published the biggest deadbeat dads.
I remember
the
that.
top 10 or top 20 deadbeat
Didn't they
dads.
stop when there were legal problems and they were
I don't
sued
know.
or something?
I don't know, but we always loved the edition because these guys that owed $25,000, $50,000,
grotesque.
$100,000 in child support. And I always think these people that are all the people that are the anti-abortion people, why don't they be the anti-deadbeat dad people too? So make sure when these women have babies that the fathers will support them, because a lot of them have worked. Massachusetts is pretty good. They'll take money out of your revenue check, as Department of Revenue will.
Tax return.
Yes, or tax return, but out of your paycheck.
Oh, right.
But in other states, you can get away with it, and it's just a disgrace. Anyway, Richie in the truck, thank you for calling.
Hey, Richie.
Hey, how you guys doing?
Fine,
We're good,
thanks.
I guess. Hi.
Love your show.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Let me fix this by just saying I was very well trained, full Irish wife, 100% Irish from.
Oh, Richie, we don't want you to go away because this sounds really good. We're going to put you on hold because it keep breaking up. We'll take one call and we'll come right back to you and hope the connection's better. Don't go away. I promise you're next after Mary in Plymouth. Hey, Mary.
Hey, how you doing?
Excellent.
Long time, couple of calls over
Great.
the years.
Welcome.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So I sort of stand as the balance point to the woman ahead of me.
Good.
My dad got no credit for this, and I had to be in my teens to recognize it, but he was a hell of a guy. He introduced me to the Beatles. He took us for walks. He read to us. He gave of himself, and that when he passed away, the wake was just packed with people.
That's great.
And as I looked around, besides my siblings, there were 8 of us. It was just like family and friends and elks and people with whom he worked. And as I grew up and found his pen and ink artwork, I just sat one afternoon and just cried that I didn't recognize what a great guy he really was until just very close to when he did die. So I'm sending a universal shout out for him.
Mary, that was a beautiful call.
That was a lovely call. I can hear the
Beautiful
emotion
call.
in your voice. It's wonderful.
That was
I
great,
mean, there are
Mary,
a lot
thanks.
of great fathers out there.
There
We all know the great fathers out there. Well, we don't all know the great
Margie
fathers
didn't
out
see
there.
hers. I didn't see mine. But other than that,
No, my father was a great father.
I'm sure he
It
was.
wasn't his fault. That's what you did in those
Yeah, I
days,
know
right?
that.
You worked, and mother was in charge of the household.
Yeah.
But I just think that it's still uneven. The balance is uneven between what moms do and what dads
should
do.
we try Richie in a truck again?
Sure.
Hey, Richie, let's hope it's better connection. Welcome again.
Hi, can
Good.
you hear me better now?
So far, it's good. Take it away.
Oh, excellent. Okay. So I gave you that preface about my wonderful wife. She trained me well. She got sick about 4.5, 5 years ago, and as she got worse and worse, I had to pick up all the obligations of raising the 3 children, as well as managing the house, as well as managing my business and her business.
Wow.
She passed away. It'll be 2 years
I'm so
as
sorry.
of next month. And for 2 years, I have single-handedly kept the family together, kept myself together. I'm going on 3.5 years sobriety. Everything's going as best as it possibly could under the circumstances. I miss her every day. I have nothing but deep respect for single parents. I think it's one of the hardest, unforgiving jobs on the planet. But I just want you to know there are men out there like myself that aren't quitting, that aren't giving up, and are doing the best we can with the circumstances we've been given.
Well,
we do
Richie-
exist. We do exist.
Well, we're sorry about your
Aren't
loss.
you?
Congratulations on your sobriety and on your what sounds like
Thank you.
terrific fatherhood. You sound like quite a guy.
Hard work.
Hey,
Hard
Richie,
work.
Richie,
And
one
thank
thing,
you for your show.
one thing before
Thank
you
you.
go. One thing before you go.
Yeah.
Do you think you get the respect for doing that, or not? I mean, do
You'd be surprised. You get some, and then you don't. There are people that actually resent you for it because they want you to fail. People in my own family
Wow.
would rather see me fall on my face. And then there are people on her side of the family that have nothing but deep respect and admiration. So it just really varies. You'd be surprised. Unfortunately, I think that's just the way the world is wired right now. People would rather see you fail than succeed. And if you succeed, then they're jealous and they just want what you have. But I'll tell you, nothing comes easy, as everyone knows who's gotten there. This is not an easy road. I would not wish it on anyone, but the payoff is I can go to sleep at night knowing I've done the best I can under the circumstances, and I do get a lot of love from my 2 younger children specifically. They show me that they definitely admire what I'm doing. I think it'll pay off in the long run. I have faith in that.
Hey, Richie, that was a great
spectacular.
call. Thank you very much. Now, that was Richie, and that was a great story about dads. But somebody just texted a few minutes ago. I can't find it now. And
what does it say?
It said, ever since he said, I do, he doesn't.
Didn't.
So there's two sides of the coin here.
But it is. I mean, by the way, you know what you used to talk about? You used to talk about on the air how you'd go to a playground with your kids when they were young.
Yep.
And your kids were, both of our kids were single digits when we met and started working together.
Yep.
They were 6, 7, 8 years old. And you would say things, correct me if I'm wrong, if the father was there, he was on his cell phone, either playing a game or doing work or that sort of stuff. You know, when I go to a playground with one of my kids' dogs rather than my kids because they're grown. There are a lot of dads are you a decent, Jamie? By the way, almost every time I talk to Jamie in the late afternoon, who do I hear screaming, talking in the background? Your kid. I mean, that's pretty, he's using foul language, but he is. And he's tiny,
taught
too.
Some swear words to the kids when he was still in diapers.
But you appear to be a really good father. I think your husband, from what I hear, probably is too, which is really a nice thing. 877-301-89. I didn't expect these kind of stories, frankly. They're really pretty moving.
I didn't expect them either. But ever since he said I do, he doesn't. Is reflected in some of the text messages. But we're going to keep checking the calls. Chuck from Watertown. What do you think, Chuck?
Hello, Chuck.
Hello there. Yeah, calling in. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. A long-time listener, but I've been off in the world of podcasts in the last number of years, and I'm glad to know you're still going on.
We're still going on. Yes. We're forging ahead.
Yes, and I love this topic, and I want to pick up on what Marjorie said about you still think there's room for improvement. Briefly, my dad was a minister. My mom was a minister's wife. It was a full-time job for her, and she made sure that her 3 boys knew how to clean a house, iron their shirts, do the jobs they had to do. So I consider myself to be very, very enlightened. We got into a marriage. We both had our careers. My wife had a big-time job, matter of fact, GBH.
Oh.
And we raised our kid, coordinated together. And anyway, she had a great insight, which I think speaks to the thing that you're getting at, Marjorie. Excuse me, I'm going too fast here.
That's okay.
She said to me, she says, Chuck, yes, you're a totally engaged dad. You're happy to help around the house. You do help around the house. You're happy to take our son to the doctor's appointment when he has to go to the doctor's appointment. But I'm the one that has to remember that there is a doctor appointment. I'm the one that has to schedule the doctor's appointment. I'm the one that's on top of things all the time. So I think there is that kind of reality that still exists. Now, I'm in my late 70s. So, but still, this has been going on. We came up here to go to graduate school, dual career marriage, the whole thing. So I think that there's a lot of truth to that statement. She was always very insightful, and that was an example.
That was great, Chuck. Boy, these are good ones. Thank you, Chuck, for the call.
Lynn from the South Shore. To husband, if I died, you would have to make meals, pack lunches, do all the activities. You'd have to clean, you'd have to learn schedules, doctor's appointments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If you died, I would have to buy a snowblower. So there you go.
Who wrote that? That's a good one.
That's Lynn from the South Shore.
That is a good one.
But somebody just corrected me and said I shouldn't say that dads are taking care of their parenting. They're not just babysitting. That used to be the old line.
What'd you say?
That when the mom's taking care of the kids, she's a mom. When dad's taking care of the kids, he's a babysitter.
Yeah.
That's changed somewhat. They're both we're both parenting now, kind of thing. But you do notice when you see dad at the park with the kids, you say, "Wow, He's a great dad.
I know, it's pathetic. You're totally right. You're totally right.
And you see mom at the park with the kids. Maybe she's great, maybe she's not so great. And I always talk to my single friends when I was younger that wanted to have more dating luck. I said, you know what? Why don't you take my kid with you to the park? And it's like a babe magnet, to be some.
My father used to use me when I was little. The rare times I saw
him,
he would take me to Atlantic City to pick up women. On my honor. Exactly. On my honor.
The baby's better than the dog in terms of trying to pick up women at the park. Mike in Tennessee. Wow. Hi.
From Boston, though. Hey, Mike. Welcome to the show. Thanks for calling.
Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
So the point I wanted to make was to reframe the dialogue as supporting all the roles that go into raising kids. So in my case, we had a traditional single-income family with a stay-at-home mom who did all the taxi service and made lunch for kids every day and had a meal cooked every night. And I worked really hard to pay for all of that. And that's an important role. We worked as a team to provide that. And so I also did help with homework and many other tasks. But although we fell into traditional roles, we weren't locked into that. And we didn't look at those roles as adversarial. And so I think the dialogue for men and women should be, how do we work together as a team to mutually respect each other's roles and our contribution to child rearing?
Another beautiful call.
That's lovely.
Thank you for doing it. You know, Jamie just pointed out something in the back row back there. Do you see a father with a little tiny baby? How old's your kid? Can you yell out? 11 months. Wow, that's a pretty great sight back there.
Okay,
that's a pretty beautiful kid.
Well, it is a. I mean, we assume he's happily engaged with mom and the baby,
or somebody and the baby.
But
yeah.
You know, like I said, you go to the park and you could get lucky in the park with somebody else's kid.
I don't think he came here to pick up women, Marjorie. It's not.
Well, you never know.
You are really difficult.
Marshall,
no, we only have a minute left.
Oh,
Marshall.
we only have a minute left.
Take it away, Marshall. You got a minute.
From Roxbury,
Hi.
thank you for calling.
Hi. Hello?
Hi. You're on.
Hello?
Yeah, hello.
Hi.
Hello?
You called us. We're here. Hello.
Maybe Marshall can't hear us.
Hello.
Are you there?
We
Yes.
are.
Can you hear us?
Hello?
Hello.
Okay, I think Marshall can't hear
Hello?
us.
Hello.
Yeah, that's not working out.
That
too
didn't
well.
go too.
Robert and Randolph.
Yeah, let's try Robert and Randolph.
Hi, Robert. How are you? Hello.
Hey, what's happening?
Hi. Got a minute. Quickly. Hi.
Yes, I'm an autistic father. I am the father of an autistic child for 26 years. I'm his AFC coordinator.
What's that? The AFC coordinator. What does that mean?
Adult foster care.
Oh, adult foster care. Wow.
I'm part of the Massachusetts answer to medical coverage. Fatherhood is what you make of it, and given what you have to address is how much of a father you find out. How about yourself?
Well, Robert, it is horrible to say we've got to cut you off there, but thank you for the sentiment and for your fatherhood, and good luck with your son. Thank you.
Congrats to Robert. We appreciate you over the weekend.
You're talking to me?
Yeah.
I hope so, too. Have a wonderful weekend. I'm Jim Browdy.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Thanks again for